for the one that love you, two for the double-double. Down kings, what we bring, baby, double trouble. Double trouble funk to wake you out your art funk. Hope you receive it well, young and like Art Monk. DC is good to go, been that way the whole time. Matter of fact, we DMV funk them borderlines. In the hood, we get it cranked to make that bank. They offering handouts, we tell them no thanks.
This one for Fat Rod, he never really got his goal. Lost his life late night right outside the show. This one for Vinny D, Stinky Dink and Scorpio. Stone Cold Hustlers, for sure the Dark Capital. This one for DJ Cool, Tony Blunt and Nonchalant. Black Indian, Section 8, DC Top. This one for Len Vibes, never really got his run. One sniff for the girl and his heart was done. This one's for Little Benny, you will always be master. Know you jamming out with Marvin in the hereafter. This one's for Henry Rollins, Annie and Mackay. Uptown, EDT, baby, DIY. This one's for Copper House, Icebox and Ibex. Club U, Black Cat, Big G and Timex. This one's for DJ CeeLo, oh so fresh and RBI. Max Kid, Huckabucks and OP Tribe. Let's ride, let's
ride. One that love you, two for the double-double. Down kings, what we bring, baby, double trouble. Double trouble funk to wake you out your art funk. Hope you receive it well, young and like Art Monk. DC is good to go, been that way the whole time. Matter of fact, we DMV funk them borderlines. In the hood, we get it cranked to make that bank. They offering handouts, we tell them no thanks.
This one's for Terry Huff, never got to sing a song. His lonely heart walked the empty streets all night long. This one's for GAC, FFC and MCA, HOA, NAA and them 2DKs. This one's for 3LG and the Poem C's. I owe you free too, so do you if you hip hop in DC. This one's for Asher Rule, Blue, Black, Cold, Kai, Sub-Z, New Geek, Theory and Dime. This one's for Right to Spring, Fugazi and Bad Brains. Riot 2020, OI Boys, this is a black year. This one's for Jay Skrilla, Tech One, Dirty Hands, Power Moves, Schoolyard, Pollen and Soul Can. This one's for the Screws, Coke Bus, Melody, Red Line, Rooftop, 6 a.m., no sleep. This for the Godfather, Soul Searcher, Chuck Brown, winding up the crowd. You in double trouble now.
One for the one that love you, two for the double-double. Down kings, what we bring, baby, double trouble. Double trouble funk to wake you out your art funk. Hope you receive it well, young and like Art Monk. DC is good to go, been that way the whole time. Matter of fact, we DMV funk them borderlines. In the hood, we get it cranked to make that bank. They offering handouts, we tell them no thanks.
This one for Big Tony, he always be getting smiles. Southside, MAC, baby, can he bow? This one for Pleasure Band, another one for Precise. Sugar Bear, EU, yeah, Lincoln Heights. This one for TCB, BYB, and we are one. TTED, second to none. This one's for Low Budget, Kev Brown, Odyssey. Unknown, homegrown, Diamond District Dynasty. This one for Freddie Teo, DJ Kelton, Don Jones. Young Senators, Will Devon and DJ Daltone. Yeah, now you hear the funk that I'm on. Put one of them records on, I feel the funk like I'm home. Like my man Boo Boo, or Flex Matthews and DJ Damu. The truth. If you need more proof, this one's for Freestyle You and the Infinite Loop. Times two.
One for the one that love you, two for the double-double. Down kings, what we bring, baby, double trouble. Double trouble funk to wake you out your art funk. Hope you receive it well, young and like Art Monk. DC is good to go, been that way the whole time. Matter of fact, we DMV funk them borderlines. In the hood, we get it cranked to make that bank. They offering handouts, we tell them no thanks.
In the Pocket, brought to you by The Hut. I'm T.
I'm Paige.
And we are grateful to be here. We're upstairs in the on-floor gallery on 1241 Good Hope Road. Currently, the show that's on exhibit downstairs is Breaking Ground by Stephanie Guerin. It'll be up from now until May the 22nd, 2021. So definitely be sure to check that out. On-floor gallery hours are Wednesday through Saturday, noon to 4. Due to the COVID restrictions, we ask that you contact our website, HONFLEUR, to make an appointment, and we will gladly have you there. Thanks to Dwayne Gauthier for allowing us to use the upstairs space. It's beautiful, it's bright, and we're definitely grateful. The song you heard that introduced the show was called Double Trouble Funk, and it's by our guest here. Let me a little bit about the In the Pocket series. We're spotlighting connections between individuals of arts and culture, music, artists, and finding out what those connections are, one conversation at a time. And I am really, really pleased to bring you someone who I've known. It's got to be like almost 20 years now, and we ran in different circles. And as it is in DC, which is a big small town, a lot of times those circles overlap. The most recent memory I can think of was, I think, in 2011, a spot called Ross Hall up on Georgia Avenue. He helped to break out my rock band Phalo Blue, and I still look at pictures of that show. Boy, that was loud. It was crazy loud. He didn't flinch, man. He didn't flinch. It was crazy loud. And I consider him a true hip hop soldier and innovator. So we're really pleased and grateful to have Cory Stowers here. Thank you so much. He's a DC-based MC, visual artist, entrepreneur who has been a mainstay in the city's independent music and street art scene for well over a decade. I would argue maybe even longer. He's the co-founder of Double Down Kings, the largest graffiti crew in the Washington, D.C. area. And we just want to welcome you, man, and thank you for coming to In the Pocket. And let's just jump right in.
Cool. Yeah. I, for one, am so glad that you're here, that I get a chance to meet you. So just a little background. I mean, I had very selfish reasons for wanting to invite you on the show. I've been a fan of street art, I feel like, forever. But I really got into it through seeing your murals, like down on U Street. And this is before I knew any local artist. I didn't know anything about it. Like, I randomly popped in an alley, and there was this kid who was telling me, "Oh, this is by Cory and by this, by Art Block," and I'm like, "Okay, great, thanks." None of that made any sense to me, but from then I started seeing your work all across the city. So yeah, you were literally the first street artist that I had any awareness or appreciation of, and everywhere I go, everyone knows your name. Everyone is just, yeah, I mean, you're a legend, so I'm super excited that I get a chance to talk to you. So thank you. I'm going to try not to fangirl this interview.
Been around the block a few times.
Yeah, but it's, and before we get started, one of the things I wanted to start and ask you is because, I tend to use graffiti, street art interchangeably. And I know that there are very strong feelings kind of in the art community about using the correct terms for things. So before we even get started, is there actually a difference between those two words? What should I be saying when I'm referring to this graffiti, street art? What is the correct terms that I should be using?
All of those things have become sort of interchangeable in the conversation, primarily because there are very, kind of minute distinctions between them. When you're talking about name writing, when you see someone's name written on the wall, that has the common tag of graffiti applied to it. If you talk to some of the pioneers, the early 70s train writers in New York, they might prefer a term like style writing. And style writing is the act of being creative with the typography as you are rendering your name out on the trains, but also on the walls, and however you do it, whether it's a signature or bubble letters or a piece, that you're bringing style into it. That is not a common used term outside of the subculture. So a lot of people just call it graffiti. Street art has its roots near and around graffiti, and it's maybe a byproduct of graffiti. But in general, most of the time when you see something and it's street art, it's image based.
Okay.
And that image is, what's being replicated. Now, that's not true in all cases. Sometimes there's a message, sometimes there's a name attached to it, and there's any, number of different variations of it. But primarily, if it's seen on the street and it has to do with imagery, and then here's the crux for both of those things: if it's not painted with permission,
Okay.
then those apply. As we probably would talk a little bit later about the murals.
Mhm.
There's a separation between works that are created, illegally versus works that are sanctioned. And there's a whole conversation within the culture about whether or not, artists should be participating, in sanctioned pieces versus just doing it illicitly. So, that's part of the ongoing conversation, though. But the distinctions really would be, if you are looking at someone's name, then that's style writing or graffiti.
Graffiti,
If
okay.
you're looking at imagery, then that's street art.
Okay. Good to know.
I found it really interesting in one of your articles when you really got into the history of name writing, like I think it was like around the time of the Industrial Revolution, or maybe it was even before that.
A little bit before that,
Yeah.
post-Civil War, really.
Yeah,
Where you start to see name writing as a communal kind of activity
right.
really starting to take shape. And I think there's a lot of reasons for it. I mean, just after the Civil War, you have all of these people who have just lived through one of the most horrific experiences in the country. People's homes are shattered, gone. Some people don't really know who they are, right? This idea of creating a alternative identity for yourself, or finding ways to kind of put that out into the world would maybe give you a sense of self-identity, maybe a sense of pride, definitely a way of communicating with other people, which is where that system really started. But as the years progressed, having your name attached to your symbols became extremely important in order for people to believe them,
Oh, okay.
because they're codes.
Right.
Those are the hobo codes.
Right. Okay.
The hobo, yeah, that whole, I mean, when I read that particular article that you wrote, and one of the other articles where it was really delving into hobo culture, which I didn't think of at the time as really a culture. I mean, I just thought, this cast is just out here roughing it, you know what I mean? And but then seeing that this other connection to like work on trains. I mean, it really,
that culture, which starts pretty much like right after the Civil War, which is when the railroad is completed, has several generations and iterations. So by the time you get into the Great Depression, and freight hopping becomes more common as an economic thing, what I'm saying, as opposed to like the post-war thing, you're starting to see other people, this is, a good 30, 40 years, 50 years or more, what I'm saying, you're having this activity taking place. It's not that big of a jump into the 60s. When you think about it, those freight trains, they're going into every major city.
Right.
And they're not going into the nice parts of town, right? They're going into the poor parts of town, which is where the term wrong side of the tracks comes from, right? You're from the wrong side of the tracks. That's where the train blows the soot, what I'm saying? And everything is covered against the prevailing winds, what I'm saying?
Yeah,
How cities are set up, what I'm saying? But the concept of being from the wrong side of the track comes from the fact that those trains would pull up in those spaces. And what do you think the kids from those neighborhoods were looking at on the trains? I'm saying? There you can see people's names written on it. People who were freight hopping would hop out. They would maybe catch their names in and around, using the codes.
Yeah.
And so you can see how this could easily transfer into the cities.
Right.
And by the time you get to that part, you're really talking about like a time of mass education for poor kids, you know what I'm saying? Whereas before, you know, the Industrial Revolution, if you were a youngin, you were more likely working with your parents at whatever job your parents were doing, you know what I'm saying, to try to provide. But once those child labor laws come into effect and there's like standardized, at least the beginnings of standardized education, you know what I'm saying, you get young kids who are getting educated, you know what I'm saying, they're learning their ABCs or their 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic, you know what I'm saying, and then what, you know what I'm saying? So you do have, you know, this outpouring of kids writing their names. In New York, I've seen the photographs, tenement buildings with like kids' names written on them. You know, they're practicing their handwriting with chalk on the side of the building.
Right.
And so you're starting to see this. That same article will kind of touch on the just the power of actually being able to write your name and what that meant at a certain time. You know, when people would say "make your mark" because most people didn't know how to write their name. To be able to actually sign your name to something. Right. To be able to do it with a sense of pride and flourish.
Right.
And became it's a thing of value.
Which is so crazy because when my child started school and got to around 2nd grade, I was waiting for him to have penmanship class. Like when I grew up in 2nd grade, we were learning how to write cursive.
Yep.
Fortunately for him, my mother taught him how to write in cursive. So he was one of maybe 2 classmates in his school. And I was like, well, what's going to happen if they're not learning how to write script when they get old enough to like something like what's going to happen to signatures? I don't understand. You know, and so that really, there was something about that piece of that article you wrote that really resonated with me about just, you know, like they'll write the act. And then the other piece about nickname. Like it was like it came from the like putting a nick in your name, putting like a bad name, and they flipped it.
Right. As always, right? Like when something becomes a derogatory, you know what I'm saying, it's flipped. You know what I'm saying, and so now nicknames have power.
Right.
And depending on your nickname, and so that's where you even get down to like given names, and chosen names. Right. So like my family named me Cory Stowers, right? You know, some of my friends might call me C, right? That's an identity they've given to me. And then I'm Eon, you know, I've chosen that for myself, or I'm Rock Creek Lee. I've chosen that identity for myself.
Right.
And now I get to create that and I get to project it out into the public.
Yeah, because I was really interested in those articles as well. I don't know if we read the same ones. I mean, but I mean, I had never really thought about graffiti and people's names in that way. You know, I've got family in New York and Chicago, so grew up kind of being surrounded by that. But it was just kind of the backdrop of being in the city.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't attach any meaning or relevance to it until I kind of read your articles, and it's like, oh, so looking at, you know, the graffiti and the street art that we have in the cities now, I think looking at it through that lens takes on a whole new meaning. You know, it's identity, it's claiming your power, it's you know, like you said, like it's making your mark.
Which is the old adage for graffiti, right? You know, like and that it's this this sense of wanting to confirm your existence, which is, I think, at base, you know, for everyone, whether they think about it or not, right? Like, you know, that there is a human predilection towards that, particularly in the working class. And that's where we get into some of those other things centered around the Industrial Revolution, where you're talking about, like, previously in the community, your identity is, you know, essentially what you do for a living.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you're the farmer, you're the wheeler.
Right.
Well, those are vocational identities that people brought over with them, right? And then you look at the end of, like, mass agriculture, like around the United States, in industrialization, people moving into the cities, right? These are people who probably for generations are working in the fields in any way, shape, or form. You know what I'm saying? Like, the idea of self-identity is not explored right?
Hmm.
That doesn't happen until, late last century, where and I think that there's a lot of things that go into it. There's socioeconomic, there's the history of this country in general, and then what it means to like be an American, right? Like those are all complex identity things. But closer to home is who am I? You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And so this idea that you could be whoever you wanted to be, you know what I'm saying, I think is super enticing to young people, particularly young people who are looking for an avenue. A lot of people wrap themselves up identity wise in certain things. You can be an athlete, you know what I'm saying? You can
Right.
be a musician, you can be, you can be an artist, Those are all things that we choose for ourselves, or we hope we choose for ourselves, as ways to signify who we are and what we're going to be great at. Those things are all displays of value to the community. And from those displays of value, we can receive validation from our community and from our peers. Graffiti is so much the exact same way.
Right. Right.
But it's just about who you're communicating to.
Yeah.
And that's always been an important part of those writings, you know what I'm saying, is talking about this intercultural language that's spoken, and that's not necessarily meant for the whole community sometimes.
You know, one thing that's crazy. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask, you're talking about identity and choosing who you want to be. Is that what attracted you to graffiti, street art? Like, what pulled you into that community?
I had no idea about any of that when I started.
Okay.
But I had some cursive kind of connections with graffiti in my early teens. There's a very well-known graffiti writer named Kier who's from my neighborhood. He was well known even early on, for writing. And then around 15, 16, there were another couple writers, Gist and Sit, and another writer named Jays. These may sound like, crazy names too, but to the graffiti community, they understand who I'm talking about. These guys were putting PG County on smash, and I'm from Hyattsville, right by PG Plaza. And so at that time, I was out every morning delivering newspapers at 4:00 in the morning with my brothers and my whole family. Really, that's something that we had been doing since I was 6. And so, around 15, 16, I happened to come across some freshly painted graffiti. Like they must have just been there because the paint was still wet. I touched it. And having been out on the street every morning at like 4:00 in the morning, what I'm saying? Like I never see anybody out. You know what I'm saying? It's just me and my family, maybe people driving to work or whatever, but you never see anybody. So that just kind of like the mystery of it, just like,
Yeah, but what is this?
Yeah. And then pretty soon after, I had another experience at school. I went to Northwestern High School, and there was a writer that went to school there. He wrote Avalon too. And one day his name was just everywhere in the school. And that was kind of like, I was like, okay, I'm starting to see this all over the place. I don't know who these people are, but I think it's cool.
Right.
And that day, my best friend, Michael Hoffman, he and I decided we were going to write graffiti, and we were just kind of like all in from there.
Yeah.
But I didn't think about any of those things. I wasn't like, oh, I need to form a self-identity to project out into the community, or, I wasn't thinking about like, oh, I want to do this because it's going to expand my potential for conceptual thought, what I'm saying, which is, I know something that I've gained from it. And I can only see that, 25 years, in hindsight, because at first it was just like, that's cool. I want to do it. Let's go.
One of the things that we mentioned a little earlier that really resonated with me was there was a period of time from 2004 to 2008 where I was working at a school called Rock Creek Academy in Northwest, and we were a provider for basically the students that DC Public School didn't want, right? And to your point, it was like I was in the arts department. So there was Haran Jabron, DJ Dirty Ice, Asheru, who was our like supervisor. He got me the gig. Ikeo, Emanon, or Claude Nadir. So we were like, there was like a whole crew of teachers. We were all there in our Clark Kents, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Teaching one thing or another. But by night we'd be on U Street and it's like Sub Z and it's like 30 Ice and Asheru, you know, it's like and the students weren't really like, it was a whole like undercurrent, you know what I mean? And I think about that now, like, you know, and it struck me because one day a student of Khalil's, of Haran Jabron, came downstairs into my room and he was like, "Oh yeah, I heard that you were the top dog." You know what I'm saying? And I was like, "What are you talking about? Go ahead, you know what I mean?" It was like a whole like alter. We had these alter egos, you know. But it was like so I respected like Asheru in terms of like, man, this guy as a teacher, as an educator, he's killing it. But I was like, we looking at my students like, y'all know how nasty this cat is on the mic? He's nasty. You know what I mean? And it was like, so when you mention that, it's like I love that. I love that about being able to kind of move in like these sort of different planes, you know, and be known and respect. I mean, my first, the guy who exposed me to hip hop gave me T Slice was he just was like, you know, when I really was taking rhyming seriously, he just was like, yeah, T Slice. And that's what he would call me. It was like, that's me.
And in hip hop, identity is fluid like that. You know what I'm saying? Like you can be KRS One, you can be the blast master,
You can be a blast
you
master.
can be the teacher.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And that can all mean the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, because identity is fluid in that way. You know what I'm saying? The nicknames is super important because different groups you might have different nicknames.
Yeah.
You know, I have like 7 different names that people know me by.
Right.
Depends on what neighborhood I'm in.
Yeah. Some people call me Seafood because they only know me in Kung Fu circles. They'll be like, Seafood. You know? Or like what you're saying, like I saw an interview on another podcast and they were referencing Nas, but they just said son. And when they said son, it was like, oh, they're talking about Nas. It was just like it was that group, it was the group of people who were talking about him, and based on their relationship with him, when they said son, you knew that they were talking about Nas.
Yeah, because I ran into someone and I, you know, mentioned your name and, you know, and they were just like, oh, okay, you know, there was no flash of recognition. Then I started talking a little bit more and they're like, oh, but they knew you by a different name. And I didn't know that name at all. They kind of knew you more on the music side. And I was like, wait, because I only knew you for the street. I'm like, wait, are we talking about the same person? Like, I didn't know he was into that. So it was really interesting, like you're talking about the identities and the, you know, depends on what group and who knows you.
Right.
So yeah, I was like, I had no idea about the, you know, about the music side, which we will be getting to. But before we, you know, kind of get there, so, you know, so 15, 16, you're like, this is cool. So then what?
I became obsessed with graffiti first and foremost, and then almost immediately after with hip hop, because up to that point, and I was selecting my own music at that point, but I had access to a lot more. Like I told you, I from 6 years old until I was 18, serving newspapers with my family every morning. I'm either listening to oldies or I'm listening to 70s rock. You know what I'm saying? So I'm getting that like, every morning. My brother listens to top 40, 80s, early 90s pop. You know what I'm saying? So I'm getting all of that because we share a room. And then my brother Damon is all hip hop. And me, I'm over here listening to Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Red Hot Chili Peppers, and that's the music that I had chosen for myself. And that changes for me when my best friend Mike Hoffman, he was into the Fugees and Tribe Called Quest and stuff like that, and I got picked up on that a little bit later. But my brother Damon played Return of the Boom Bap, and I was over across the room. I was drawing in my book. I was doing graffiti in my own little graffiti world, and my brother plays Return of the Boom Bap, and I'm like, "What's this?" And he hands me the CD, and it's got a big KRS-One tag on the front, and I'm like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Yeah," and so I kind of stopped listening to all of that stuff.
That was 93, right?
That I would have gotten it in 94.
Okay.
Got it in 94 because my brother got it from my brother. All of his CDs, and he had like hundreds of them. They all came from the pawn shop that he worked at, so it had a little bit of time.
Yeah.
But I think 94 was really the I got it because I was current by the time Beastie Boys came out with Communication.
Right.
Like, I absorbed that real time. You know what I'm saying? And I was already kind of focused. I had already absorbed Tribe Called Quest by that point in time. Fat Joe, Channel Live. Artifact.
Oh, what a sweet year.
I bought
what a sweet few years.
the first hip hop record I ever bought was Artifacts, and it was Dynamite Soul with Mad Skills on the remix.
Oh man!
And again, it's another one of those graffiti. I mean, those hip hop albums that got graffiti in the back. And of course, so I'm just soaking all that up. Like I'm like, okay, and I'm starting to see, like that this culture has something a little bit deeper than just this thing that I've been doing. And not really understanding the history of it and all that. And I'll learn later, I'm saying that the old pioneers don't consider themselves hip hop, but at that point in time, like I got it that way, because since '82, graffiti's really been kind of tied to, rap, DJ, breakdancing, the four elements in the Zulu Nation presentation.
Sure.
So that's how I get it.
Right.
And I see the connection immediately, and I kind of, dive into it.
Yeah.
So are you hanging out in DC at this point? Are you an active part of the graffiti community at this time, or are you still kind of doodling?
So we were pretty active early on in PG.
Okay.
I painted Bombed in DC, which is just quick, getting up around like Union Station and under the New York Avenue Bridge on the Red Line. That was my first Red Line hit, and I did that in 1995. But up until that point, I was really spending a lot of time in Hyattsville, spending a ton of time in College Park, and the Green Line, the above ground portion of the Green Line from College Park to Greenbelt was my lane, what I'm saying? And College Park, which I put on Smash for a few years. Even not like painting in DC that much because that's my neighborhood. And even to, it's been this way most of my graffiti career, which is if I don't live in that neighborhood, I don't really bother.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Because, I don't want to be going to somebody else's neighborhood. That's why I do murals. I'd rather go to somebody else's neighborhood and do something cool. That's not to say that I didn't ever do it. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying, like,
You had a certain code that
I tried to. I wanted to see my stuff up. You know what I'm saying? So if I wasn't in that part of town,
You
there ain't no
never
point for me to go see it.
Right.
Go do it. You know what I'm saying? But if I was, I painted the Red Line a lot in between 96 and 98, 99. Those were like my heavy years for them because I was living in Tacoma and I worked in DuPont Circle. So I was taking the train every day. You know what I'm saying? Like I wanted to see my stuff.
Yeah.
So that I painted that. But so I was in College Park a lot. And that all kind of switched in 1996. I started working downtown, living in Tacoma, working downtown. I worked at Kramer's Books and Afterwards Cafe for a number of years, and would take overnight shifts and stuff like that, and then walk the streets and bomb, get up. And around 1997, I moved into the city. and that was ninth and O
Okay.
in 1997.
Wow, so that's over there by One World Studios. Wow, 97 on 9th and O Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right around.
That's raw.
And that's right around when I arrived in the city,
Oh, okay.
or like in the greater DMV. I was living in Alexandria, but working in the city.
Mhm.
And I was one of my first jobs was working for one of the business improvement districts,
Mm-hmm.
and with the cleaning crews.
Mm-hmm.
And one of their tasks was always to remove any graffiti
Mhm.
that was on the buildings, on sidewalks,
Mhm.
whatever. You know, the city was not welcoming, was not embracing it. It was definitely seen as something negative.
Mhm.
You know, so since you were in the scene, like what was the general perception of graffiti at the time?
In 97, it was still underground.
Mhm.
And it would be for another few years, really. But you know, 97 was coming at the end of 5 or 6 really important years in terms of like graffiti history in DC. The MCA crew had formed. LaFont Plaza, which is the Hall of Fame, had been kind of discovered and pioneered as
The Hall of Fame. That's what that. So
What is that? Or who is that?
the Hall of Fame is a set of tunnels in the downtown area that was built late 80s
yeah.
in order to house some infrastructure above. If we don't, people we know where it is. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Okay.
But in 89, 90, it was being built, and it's a long set of tunnels, tons of walls, tons of wall that goes down two train tracks. So that becomes like a primary focus for the graffiti writers.
Wow.
Before that, it had been the canals in Georgia.
Yeah.
And after the canals got hot, and that was one of the only places where you could actually go and paint like some big stuff. Like Georgetown was kind of the epicenter of a lot of the cultural things happening, whether it was punk or whatever have you.
Yeah.
A lot of that stuff was mixing down there in the canals. But the canals got hot, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And when that did, it was kind of, just, kind of the same span of time when the space got discovered. And so the artist started to focus there. Obviously, the Red Line is, still a favorite at that point, you know what I'm saying, had been for a number of years. But in the city, you know what I'm saying, like you couldn't paint, without being, questioned, meaning that in 96, 97, when there was actually a push from the graffiti writers to do walls, such as the one that State of the Union. You remember hieroglyphics in the alley? That was a big deal because there was only a couple of legal walls that had happened before that. The first one happened in 1992 at Stead Park. That's the Humanity Wall. And then there's the one above Tony's Place down by GW that had like the graffiti pieces, which is still there. It's just covered by a fabric billboard. In which case, those were like the only two like legal places like that people had painted. So when 19 did hieroglyphics in the alley, that kind of opened up because U Street and 14th were already getting bombed pretty heavy because there was a lot of cultural, all the music was there. That's where the writers were going. There was places where people didn't necessarily care about, and we were getting over in the alleyways. And so
19, by the way, he in the I please correct me if I'm wrong, but because I didn't meet 19 until like 94, something like that. Really, he took rap to like really just interesting levels and stuff. And I think he even had a gig with BET for a little bit.
I believe he was the art director there for a while.
Yeah. Real soft-spoken guy,
but
nasty.
He's of that first generation after that hip hop big bang. So he's painting down F Street in like 85, 86.
Yeah.
With Scott and with Maze and with Aztec and Ray's, who are some really, really early writers.
Right.
And we only know this because there's some photographs of them painting.
Yeah.
But that he kept on like through that, and he's actually responsible for the first legal graffiti style murals in the city through DPR.
Yeah.
He did a program down at I think it's First and South Capitol, right there by the National Stadium. He
Yeah.
actually has one of his murals still there,
Wow.
and another one in the courtyard. But then also he did like Lincoln Middle School in Columbia Heights with a mural titled Survival,
Yeah.
which got featured in The Source, I think, around that time.
Okay.
So he was just, and that stuff's not like traditional, like that's my name.
Yeah.
I'm saying he's designing something that's outside. It's more community facing than his name, right? And there were other instances of it through those late 80s, early 90s, but he's definitely one of the focal points of the aerosol exhibit.
Sure.
Now, is this the same period where Cool Disco Dan is painting?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, can you talk a little bit about him? He wasn't a name that I knew until after he passed, and they did the show at 930 Club. So I knew his name, you know, and I know how much respect he has in the community, but I've never seen his work or knew anything really about him.
So Disco Dan is one of the original we call go-go writers, or at least one that like maintained and got popular after the big boom, you know, years for those writers, and that would be like 1984 to like 1987 was a time when in the go-go culture they had their own style of graffiti that was centered around the bands, which, you know, if you're looking at graffiti from the long view, it's actually more similar to what we call soul names, which are pre-1970 graffiti, which we're going to delve into in the aerosol exhibit as well, which talks about the very pivotal period between 1967 and 1970, where the social contract was broken through Vietnam, through the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, that really kind of kicked off this kind of subversive art movement, whether you're talking about graffiti, whether you're talking about murals, even, you know what I'm saying, the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King is a linchpin event for the cultural explosion of graffiti writing. And from that are soul names. Now, during the uprisings after Dr. King's assassination, businesses took to writing soul brother, soul sister on the front of their businesses. And in the immediate aftermath, the context of that was still probably relatively known to the adults, but to the young kids that were growing up in those neighborhoods where soul brother and soul sister stayed written on the outside of buildings for 5, 10, 15 years, you know what I'm saying? It looks like a name, you know what I'm saying? Like, and that inspires the soul names, you know what I'm saying? And that's a very short period of time, like between when that all happens and when, you know, New York explodes with graffiti. But I trace it back to that kind of like broken social contract, this idea that whatever you thought America was, it ain't that, and the rules that we've been kind of like holding on to, we don't really need to like listen to those, you know.
Right.
And that sets up, you know, I mean, there's a whole lot that goes into that. There's the gang cultures of the 60s and 80s, you know what I'm saying? So if you were living in the Bronx, if you were living in Brooklyn, and these places, it, you know, felt like, yo, there ain't no rules here, you know, so you're going to do as is. You know?
Right. You know, what's crazy is that, you know, when we talk about Cool Disco Dan, and I just thought about those days when, so I went to Archbishop Carroll High School, and I would have to, usually if I took the bus, I lived on this side of town, so I'd have to take the A bus and then take, I think, an 80, or I'd take this other bus that would take me around McKinley Tech. And I remember some mornings sitting on the bus, and I'd see like a big S, and it'd be like Savage Sneed, or, you know, Go-Go Kevin, Bush Philly, whoever, whatever, right? Like, it'd be like, And I remember sometimes I'd see these names and think to myself, man, I'm glad that I'm not on the bus with Savage Steve right now because he sounds terrifying. Or like, the X bus, the long X buses.
Yeah.
Boy, those rides would be long, and I see those names on the window like that, and I just be like, man, these people, who are these people?
And so Disco Dan comes from that culture.
Right.
And it's funny because like Dan tells the story that when he started writing, because so many people were so invested in go-go culture, when he started calling himself Disco Dan, people dissed him, you know what I'm saying? Because they didn't realize why he had it. In reality, like he got it from Disco Danny, from what's happening.
From what's happening.
And that was a nickname that he had gotten when he was a kid.
Wow.
Disco Danny, right? And so he picked that up. And also his father was a DJ, you know what I'm saying? And so that he had a connection with music in that way. And Dan was always about the music. But we kind of jump back to say that he is a kind of holdover from the Soul Name era, and meaning because DC was so closed off to New York initially because we had our own thing. You know, we in '76 Chuck got a hit record with Bustin' Loose. You couldn't tell us nothing. Trouble Funk dropped a couple of big records that are
EU free
hip hop standards. Those
records. Which a lot of times New York guys don't give it up.
Right. But so we had our own thing.
Yeah.
And when people were trying to do the New York Bama shit, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
They got pushback, right? Because we're a band town. We're not a DJ town. You know what I'm saying? And so, but we had our own graffiti, which was kind of held over. So that same population that picked up that artwork in New York didn't pick it up in DC that same way, right? That artwork got picked up in the suburbs to a certain extent. Now, I'm not saying that nobody from DC, because obviously we know Rec, we know Grizz, we know Sir, you know what I'm saying? We know Ultra, and you know these are cats that were here and in that time and operating, and they picked up on the newer form of graffiti, right? But in math, like the go-go writers did not. That kind of went the way of the Soul Names, right? Saying which is they did with
big funky Magnum 44 mark.
Cool, calm Chuck. You know, but and then some folks like Ari Randy, who I just met for the first time last year, and he came out and he's got a piece in the 14th Street Graffiti Museum, and Lisa of the World, you know what I'm saying?
Lisa of the
and
World.
So these were names, you know, that we learned of through Dan. Because by the time I started writing, you know what I'm saying, like most of those names did not exist anymore. They were gone. And the way that we knew about a lot of them was from Dan telling us the stories and from Dan's roll calls. And so I have like several loose leaf sheets of paper, which are just line by line and sometimes with triple columns of names of go-go graffiti writers. And Dan would grade them, like was up a little bit, was up a lot, you know what I'm saying? King, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know.
Wow.
And that's how I know a lot of those names. This is how a lot of my friends, you know what I'm saying, who came in that mid 90s generation learned of a lot of these OG writers. You know what I'm saying? Like, because there wasn't a whole lot left. Now, we saw Southeast Shit and Sandman and the other names that were associated with FFC, which was Dan's crew, and there was
Fairfax, right? FFC, was that the
Fierce Fighting Crew.
Fierce Fighting. Okay. I remember seeing FFC, but I always thought it was Fairfax.
FFC
like Fairfax Village or something.
is a Cool Disco Dance Crew. It's an extension of Gangsta Chronicles. So if there was a Baby Chronicles, it would have been like Dan. Dan would have been like within the kind of like, you know, baby generation, so to speak. A lot of those FFC members were originally Gangsta Chronicles members. When Gangsta Chronicles kind of like went to the wayside, Dan had his own thing. FFC continued because, and this is why Dan is so important, Dan ended up painting with the suburban writers, right? The writers that were coming out of Northern Virginia, out of Montgomery County, and getting in crews with them. That's MCA crew, Murder Capital Artists. That's NAA crew, Never Admit Anything, you know what I'm saying? These are ELW crew, Everlasting Writers. Hoods of Art, you know what I'm saying? Dan is a member of early, you know what I'm saying? Because he knew Sec and I'm sorry, he knew Rec and Sir, because they were operating in the same sphere.
Mm-hmm.
Dan really jumps in like 84, and then he's kind of put it down by 87. In 87, he makes a comeback. And then by 89, he's in prime position to meet all of these suburban writers who are now coming into DC because the spaces where they've been painting out in the counties are starting to get hot. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
And also they're getting a little bit older. And so, with DC is like the cultural epicenter. If you were into music, you're coming here for hardcore shows.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You're coming here for hip hop shows. You know what I'm saying? Whatever's happening, you're probably coming into DC. And the Red Line. You know?
Right.
So by the time 1989 rolls around, Dan is the king, really, of DC because he's been writing his name, solidly now for about 5-6 years.
Right.
And is that considered like a really long time to be on the scene?
Given the fact that I think the average life cycle for a graffiti writer, particularly in DC, if I think about it, it was like 2 or 3 years, you know what I'm saying, where they would be in it, here, participating. Sometimes they're teenagers here and then they go to school somewhere else. Sometimes they're from someone else and they end up coming to school here,
Okay.
because we were a big college town. And some of our original early folks are here for college, like Seven, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He was an early writer and an early pioneer writer here. He came from Florida for school. Scott, the graffiti writer Scott, who, when we were sitting down, your friend informed me that that's Scotty Hardkiss, the DJ. And he's not from here, so I imagine maybe he was here for school, About my point, that you might have like 2 or 3 years of representation. So Dan, being from here, had a sense of longevity, but also it was more than that, though. It was more than the time that he spent, because that was 5 years. That's a good, decent amount of time. But it was the way in which he was writing his name, where he was writing his name, how widespread across the city it was. Because Dan had just as much stuff here on this strip as he did on the Red Line, as he did in Georgetown,
everywhere.
you know what I'm saying, as he did in DuPont Circle. So, and he had stuff going out to Montgomery County, and he had stuff going out to PG. So he was, he got around. Most of that is because Dan, for a large portion of his adult life was homeless. And he told me one time, that if I saw his name in like a hard to reach spot on a roof or something like that it was a good chance that he had slept there. Because it was safer on the roof than it was on the ground. And those would be his spots, and sometimes he would have some things stashed there, in case he needed them.
Sure.
And so, but Dan's connection to the original culture in DC it can't be, overstated at all, because he would champion that scene of writers, and kept hundreds of writers' names alive well past the time that they got buffed. We know about a lot of writers who were participating in the culture in that early 80s chapter that aren't documented in photographs.
I think about it when, I listen to some of my old go-go tapes. I'm an old go-go tape guy, and you hear the roll calls. Particularly, you mentioned Lisa of the World. And again, like I mentioned before, I would see some of these names and they would generate, I would get a feeling, And I remember seeing Lisa of the World name, and I who, what is she? I wonder what Lisa of the World looks like. Like, what gave her, like, she's got, she's got some guts. She's out here, like, it's nothing but like dude names, and here comes Lisa of the World. She just took it all.
And she's early. She's 82.
Yeah.
And she's around for the forming of Gangster Chronicles. She was dating Alley Cat at the time.
Alley Cat. So Alley Cat was leader of Gangster Chronicles, right? Gangster Chronicles. 18 Gangster Chronicles were
Barry Farms Ghostbusters.
Barry Farms Ghostbusters, Hill Boys, 8th and H, which was like yikes, right? Like 8th and H, they just took it to like 8th and H is ridiculous. 83, I saw Mad Max for the first time on the Red Line. And I didn't know who this guy was. He had like big spikes on his knuckles and crazy, like, and I was like,
Minnesota Avenue Crew.
Minnesota
Kenny
Avenue
Ball.
Crew?
But so Dan had all of that like encapsulated in him, and he gave it to us. So you can see that in the Pumping Up DC Subcultures of the 1980s, that book that Roger Gassman put together, in the Legend of Cool Disco Dan film. Because a lot of that stuff that you see end up on the screen came from Dan telling us the story.
It was an excellent film.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
film, they were able to lay a backdrop for the story of Disco Dan, like in a way that, I mean, when you leave that film, it's like it really set up. It was amazing. It was masterful how they were able to create this context in which he was in.
And I worked on that film with them, and on the book. I found Mad Max. I found East of the World.
Yeah.
Max had been home for maybe like 2 weeks. We found him. We did that interview with him. That I got to meet all of them. I met Kenny Paul. I stood on the corner of Minnesota Avenue with him and the Minnesota Avenue crew at Mario's. You know what I'm saying? And just talked about $1 million corners. You know what I'm saying? That present for that conversation.
For sure.
So that was hearing getting to see it like that, and Dan was with us. You know what I'm saying? So then here's Dan interacting with all of these people. Like we were talking about Chuck Brown, talking about Marion Barry, that are in that film.
Yeah.
Dan's interacting with them. He was Sugar Bear over here.
Right.
Wow. And so they all knew him?
They, of course, they all knew who Dan was because he's infamous, right? But that celebrity is secondary, in my opinion, you know what I'm saying, to Dan as a person, who, you know what I'm saying, was, I mean, I've never had a friend like Dan.
Sure.
I grew up in a middle class environment, you know what I'm saying? Like, Dan had been through some things that I couldn't even imagine, you know what I'm saying? And years after we met and became friends, and he came to live with me for like 7 or 8 months, and I really got to know him even more, because we actually talked. A lot of the times when you're in the graffiti culture, you don't get to hang out with the people you look up to, because there's not that intergenerational connectivity. If you were spending time with someone, it was probably in a large group, thing, and it was only for a few hours or whatever. You guys are somewhere painting. It's this gallery show. It's that you're not getting to spend hours and hours and hours.
Sure.
But over those months, I got to spend a lot of time with him. And his idea of the culture, you know what I'm saying? He didn't look down on murals. He didn't look down on younger graffiti writers. He only cared if you were being respectful, you know what I'm saying, like in the overall context of the community, you know what I'm saying? And then, the history that he shared, that he preserved, that he passed to us orally, that he spent time with Roger and getting those stories down. I mean, you think about that documentary and how quintessential DC is. Now imagine if that project did not exist.
People would be saying like he was just a guy.
Yeah.
Even him, all those other people.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because nobody's been talking about this.
Right.
And bringing up the old bands and stuff
Sure.
like that. That was before the Don't Mute DC movement. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? And so that was a dream project of Dan's. Dan wanted that story, and Roger and Joseph Patisol, who directed it, they obviously, because of their love for DC and DC culture, you know what I'm saying, like, saw that vision and they created that vehicle. But those were all Dan's stories.
Yeah.
Do you think, why isn't he more well known outside of the outside of graffiti culture. Like, to me, he should be up there with, Marvin Gaye, with Chuck Brown. Some people kind of know who he is, but he still seems more like an underground
I
person.
think it's a new DC thing. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
And just in the context that people who are new to the city probably aren't going to catch on to it. There's a couple of spaces where he's honored in exhibition. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, we have the 14th Street Graffiti Museum now, where there's the portrait of him done by Eric B. Ricks. There's they believe down on 14th and U, they have like an old electric boxy tag that's been gifted to them, and then the Corcoran has the piece. But other than that, and down here on MLK and Howard on the Many Voices, Many Beats, One City, we put his tag up there. We put his tag at the corner of Florida and T by the Howard Theater. So those are places that honor him. I mean, but there's not a whole lot of places where you're going to go and get access to that information. It's still to a certain extent, because most of the time people only attribute Dan with his signature, that they forget that he's actually a very gifted illustrator and artist, and has a excellent sense of satire. You know what I'm saying? In his writing, his captions, and things of that nature. So a lot of people forget that. And I think that that's maybe one of the reasons. Obviously, like what Dan's legacy may or may not be is up for debate, and we're only a few years past losing him. So that all that stuff's yet to be determined anyway. I do know that the name Cool Disco Dan is well respected across graffiti. And as a testament, I'm gonna probably butcher this story. But
It's about the donuts.
pardon me?
No, I was just thinking because a guy tried to open up a donut store.
Oh no, I'm hip to that.
Yeah.
I'm hip to that, and that got shut down really quick.
Shut down ASAP.
I don't know this story.
There was so this is about like how Dan is respected across graffiti culture. In California, there's a crew called Seventh Letter. Have you ever heard of them?
No.
They're an extension of MSK and AWR crew, very well respected, well known Los Angeles graffiti crews, and big time. They're probably the most popular graffiti crew in the world. Going back, like 8-10 years, that's still the case. They're still, the most popular. They're ascending at that point, but they're very, very high level in the graffiti culture. Two of their members are coming home from Australia from doing some sort of painting event there, and they get a message that Cool Disco Dan is going to be in California tomorrow doing something, and then he's going to be gone. And these guys get flight from Australia to the airport, and immediately from the airport to where Disco Dan is to be able to meet with him. And they did some tags on the on like a police car or something like that, which is really cool. That's the stuff that was facilitated with Roger while they were working on the film. But it's a testament, because those guys are the biggest guys in the game, in and around that time, and they wanted to come and meet Disco Dan.
For sure.
Matter of fact, after Dan came home, I didn't see him. Every time I saw him, he was dripped in like Seventh Letter gear, like. This is also the same trip. If you guys have ever seen the picture online with Disco Dan and Kourtney Kardashian.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Same trip. Because he was going to California when they were working on the video. So yeah, and that's pretty. It's pretty funny.
Well, so we're gonna look at a video called Skill Building Trade. And then we're going to talk a little bit more on the back end.
At least the master mason who laid that cornerstone. The skill building trade still exists today, cause of DJ SMK and OG Sec, HOA. Cheer. What up, Hood Spot? What up, Hood Spot? Double down king. I see you, LOZ. Solomon Key. What up, FFC? Speaks. Double down king. Cold leader cut. Dub squad. Yeah. SMK's the keystone holding the arch together. Wedge bricks cut to fit beautiful architecture. No need to push the beam because we all get measured. Survey scenes by any means. Mathematic law is treasured. Meet on levels, part on squares. Masonic law is present. If I level with my partners, then we're all invested. If we invest intelligently, then we'll all live better. But if we do it ignorantly, then we'll all get vested. The widow's son walked the earth just searching for proof. Through the fog of all the lies and still found no proof. Yet through it all thought divine and soon doubt left too. Opening his mind to the light illuminating his view. He found perfect proportion, her calculated voices. A magical mixture moving bricks into odor. Mixing the motor, twist the Solomon key. To find a skill building trade in the heart of DC. The skill building trade still exists today cause of DJ SMK and OG Sec HOA. The skill building trade still exists today and leads the master mason who laid that cornerstone. The skill building trade still exists today cause of DJ SMK and OG Sec HOA. And leads the master mason. And leads the master mason. And leads the master mason who laid that cornerstone. So where's the loyalty? Your cats is claiming that you're royalty, but can't hold a candle to the vandals that are boys with me. I'm crew connected like chain link fences. Never step to the throne with false pretenses. Roll with two dope kings since I rose from the prince. Now I'm known in my zone for pain that shit. I drop a burner, it ain't nothing, man. I'm frontin' really something. I make something out of nothing, then some fucker runs to Buffett. What a shame for these lames, I ain't giving it up. Year after year, you see the name still getting it up. It's always fresh, never stale, steady switching it up. On you cock riding toys that be licking the nuts. And my style derived from older G's that lived it enough to pass the skill building trade down to the young bucks. So when you see us every summer fucking with these up and comers, don't go frontin' cause you know we only do it cause we love it. The skill building trade still exists today cause of DJ SMK and OG Sec HOA. The skill building trade still exists today and leads the master mason who laid that cornerstone. The skill building trade still exists today cause of DJ SMK and OG Sec HOA. And leads the master mason. And leads the master mason. And leads the master mason who laid that cornerstone. The skill building trade still exists today cause of DJ SMK and OG Sec HOA. The master mason who laid that cornerstone. And leads the master mason who laid that cornerstone. The skill building trade still exists today cause of DJ SMK and OG Sec HOA.
Skill building trade. Build your skills. Was that the KRS had a tune called Build Your Skills.
Yes. 1995 subtitle.
Yeah.
That was a big one for me.
Yeah. Well, Boom Bap was a big one for me because Boom Bap, reason why I remember that year specifically because I was having a tough breakup. And Midnight Marauders and Boom Bap came out around the same time. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, they were like, they carried me. Those two albums carried me through, like, I mean, when I was feeling miserable, mm-hmm. I mean, it's amazing what, you know.
I think I told you I got Return of the Boom Bap first.
Yeah.
And then because my brother had others, I got Sex and Violence, and I got music, The Blueprints of Hip Hop.
Oh.
But I was working at a coffee house called Planet X in College Park
mm-hmm.
In 1995 when Tony Blackman walked in, and she was promoting the KRS-One self-titled album. It hadn't come out yet.
Yeah.
She was putting up posters for it. And she asked one of the guys if she could put a poster up, and he kind of like said, you know, brushed her off, and I was like, what's the poster? And she like rolls it out. I'm like, yo, yeah. I took it back and I pulled all this stuff off the wall, like put it up right here.
Right.
I still have that poster.
Oh
That's
man.
amazing.
But that day, I had a conversation with her, and she is the one that told me to come to the cop house.
Tony Blackman is the founder of the Freestyle Union.
Yeah. And so 2 weeks later, I had just seen 3LG on the field at University of Maryland. They played daytime show. It was amazing.
Yeah.
The next week I meet Tony. I don't know who she is yet.
Right.
But she has given me this important information. One, there's a new KRS-One album coming out.
Right.
And two, that if I come down to this place,
Right.
I'm going to meet other people who are doing hip hop. Because I told her, I was like, I'm rapping.
Right.
And I was full. I might even spit her some bars. But she told me to come.
Right.
She told me to come. She wrote down the address for me. She
Yeah.
told me how to get down there on the metro.
Yeah.
And when I got down there,
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of like when my real like hip hop apprenticeship really started.
Kaffa House was a special place.
Absolutely.
It was a special place. The muffins weren't going to be that fresh. Okay, you don't go to Kaffa House like I'm going to go there to have a muffin.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can have one,
Mm-hmm.
You don't actually go there for the coffee.
but you don't really go there for the coffee. You go there for what's happening in the back.
You talking about the weed smoke?
Oh, I ain't talking about that.
That's what I thought he was talking. I'm like,
But that was actually kind of precursor to like how we have DC now.
Yeah.
Kaffa House was just like
Kaffa House is a special
that.
place. Special
And
place.
so I went down there for that Freestyle Union meeting, cipher. I met Storm that day.
Yeah.
I met Priest that day. I didn't rap.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, I didn't rap. I went to maybe 3 or 4 other Freestyle Union meetings, ciphers, and I didn't rap.
Yeah.
I was on the wall,
Mm.
just kind of soaking it all up.
Yeah.
Because I had never been around like people who were so agile
It was
with
crazy.
their vocabulary,
Yeah.
with just concepts, and people bringing up, somebody mentioning an object and somebody using it in their freestyle, and these sort of things, like that was super foreign to me. I was more at the parties around my way. There was a beat playing.
Yeah.
Me and my homeboys are doing a freestyle.
Yeah.
That was like where Cory was. Going down there, it was a completely different thing, and it really kind of cemented into my head the idea that if you are going to do this, you are going to have to do this on a level that either can sit with this, you know what I'm saying, with what you see here, or exceed it if you can, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
but that was the thing, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I didn't touch the mic in Kaffa House for 3 years.
Yeah.
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 We were doing the open mic shows, the Tuesday night events. I was hosting an open mic.
Right.
I wouldn't rap, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I was just surrounded by so many amazing,
That's a
artists.
special time. That's a special time. So street art and public perception in DC has changed since you started.
Oh yeah. Time was, and there was a time when any weekend on, of the year 97 to 99, you could find me in one of the alleyways on U Street painting. Most of that was done with permission. So that was just kind of like we took the space because nobody was doing anything with it. But those were problematic times because we were still, there was an enforcement from the police, and I told the story on our walking tours, certain alleys, I'm very, very familiar with because I've been laid face down, at gunpoint.
It was that serious.
It was. And we had jump outs, you know what I'm saying? Like I remember very distinctly this guy, he had dreads and a Che Guevara shirt on and some Nike boots, and he came and he was like standing around us while we were painting, and we were smoking a blunt. This is pre decriminalization. And he's there talking with us for a couple of minutes, and then he dips around the corner, and then all of a sudden we have unmarks on us, and he's putting me in handcuffs.
Good girl.
And I was, and it wasn't for the weed; it was for painting. and then we were on the side of Capital City Records. That little wall.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So you know, and that wasn't uncommon that we would be painting for a few hours, and all of a sudden there'd be police cars there. So you know, we started getting a little bit more organized, and I started, you know, getting permits from property owners. You know, it was one of the benefits of me knowing how to use the graphic design program, and setting up like official letters, you know what I'm saying, and having people sign them, and you know, even going as far as making sure there's everybody in the crew has one printed out in their pocket just in case, because we've had that happen before too, where I have a permit, he doesn't have a permit, or he's getting locked up.
Right.
You know, his name's not on the permit.
Like, to me, it just blows my. It's graffiti. It's paint on a building.
Right, but
what was the big deal?
well, the big deal is that you have general public disconnect in terms of what they're looking at. You know, the broken window theory states that if you see graffiti, it's because there's other bad things happening, right? That's like, you know,
Okay, so they're assuming
if
it's
the
like
window's
gangs.
broken, then graffiti's going to come. Then so that's broken windows theory. That's the frame. You know what I'm saying, that media has had for graffiti all the way up into this, you know, last 10 years essentially. You know what I'm saying? In general, 9 times out of 10, if you're seeing some sort of media that's produced about graffiti, it's usually in a derogatory, and it's used to show how the neighborhood is going to hell. Right. And then you have the fact that people just don't know what they're looking at, right? So everything looks like gang graffiti. You know, while there was real gangs, you know what I'm saying, in and operating and around the time, there's never really been gang activity like that in DC. We've always had neighborhood crews, you know, never really the gangs. You know, towards the late 90s, particularly in Uptown, you did have pushes in from, you know, some of the bigger Latino gangs. And that was of some sort of concern for MPD. And I know that that's always looked at differently anyway.
Right.
When it came down to the stuff on U Street and the things that we were doing, it was definitely a prerogative thing based off of whomever was in that patrol car, whoever was there around. And they felt like, you know, they wanted, I mean, because, you know, like I said, we've been placed face down at gunpoint for painting on the side of the wall.
Right.
That has really gone away, actually. I could roll up to more than likely any corner of the city, take out a couple crates of spray paint and my ladder, and just start to paint. And 9 times out of 10, nobody's going to say anything to me. They're just going to be like, "Oh, great, another new mural." Going. You know,
Right.
That's the difference in temperature now between like late 90s DC versus now, and the difference that 20 years makes. You know what I'm saying? And the artists being out in the community and creating large scale works.
Okay, so you think that was the turning point? The artist doing more community based work versus, I don't know.
So Jim Graham, who was the council member of Ward 1 for many years, was the first one to really recognize what the graffiti writers were doing on 14th Street, U Street, and Shaw. That's his corridor anyway. He also was, you know, coincidentally, you know, his ward is actually getting hit harder than anybody's ever. You know, ward, you know, that ward has always been the heaviest bombed.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if that extends all the way to the red line, but it's that same kind of chunk. But he saw what we were doing on 14th and U Street. And matter of fact, he stopped by one time and he's like, "Oh, if I can find a way to, you know, get you guys some funding, you guys, you know, maybe paint some murals for the city."
Right.
And that turned into him creating Murals DC. The
Oh,
program.
So that was Jim
that
Graham.
was Jim.
Which is different from DC Murals, which is our archiving project that's helmed by Dr. Perry Franken, which was started in 1997 to document street art and murals in DC. Murals DC, funded in its first 2 years by Jim Graham's out of his own ward's funds, sought to give the graffiti writers a path to public service through the creation of graffiti-style community murals.
Wow.
That got hijacked by DPW in 2009. You know, what was intended to be a mentorship program, which gave agency to the younger artists in the city, turned into kind of like glorified photo ops for DPW as they, you know, seek to, you know, sell the narrative that they're doing something good.
Right.
That something that I know personally because I was in that program, executed walls for them, and have had a number of one-on-one conversations with the people who run that program about the issues with it. Anyway, long story short is, 2009, that program kicked into high gear, and we started to, put up some really strong walls, like Destination Deanwood down in Helen Burroughs, or My DC on the corner of Randolph and 14th. We did a number. We've done a number.
You've done a bunch down on U Street. The Black
So
Broadway.
so that's not with Murals DC.
That's not okay.
No. So we did a whole collection of. And a matter of fact, I ran that program in 2011, and that's when we get artists like Eric B. Ricks, Shell Love. Who else was with us that year? Richard Coleman. These are real DC graffiti writers who are creating public works with the help of the younger graffiti writers.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that's like the only year that really happens. I had some other walls that I did for them in 2009 and 2010, which had that same structure. But outside of the walls we did, and Assad had a wall, where it was focused like that. Where the youngins who were young graffiti writers who were out bombing were actually working with him to do the mural. And there's been a handful of them. I don't want to say that it never happened, but 80% of that is a professional artist getting a commission, them handling it. You know what I'm saying? Maybe getting assigned some volunteers that have of interest in graffiti or street art, but not the young graffiti writers. And as a matter of fact, up till this day, this may change this year because they have a new application process. Up till this day, none of the assistant younger artists who ever performed and worked on those walls have ever been given their own public commission.
Oh, really?
And that's over 10 years.
Wow.
And there's some pretty amazing young artists that fit into that category. We're talking about young graffiti artists, young visual artists who have been here in the city for 10 plus years working on their craft.
Right.
And never recognized by that program.
Yeah, and I've heard, and this is probably outside the program because, I don't know what works were in or out, but I've heard from, some artists who feel that, there's like a handful of artists who kind of get anointed and they get all the commissions, they get all the walls, and others aren't being given the same opportunities.
It's an optics thing. It's a process thing. The problem, so there are certain artists that fall into that category. And there are a number of those artists that were introduced in those formative years, that 2010, 2011 cadre artists that I introduced to the program, that I brought in. These artists didn't apply. You know what I'm saying? Like, I went and got them. We're talking about Kobe Kennedy, you know what I'm saying? Sita Sadalai, Juan Pineda. These are, well-known muralists now. But in 2010, 2011,
They were.
most of them had not had their first public commission from
Oh,
DC.
wow. Okay.
So, in order to really like get down to the skinny of this, I'd have to go into, history with certain nonprofit organizations that I was art director for, and the ambitions of the ED and all of that stuff. And I'll just leave it to say that nobody was really discussing the best interests of the artists or the young people. And when the conversation was brought up, I was frozen out of the conversation. But since that time, what I'm saying, the artists that were brought have been favored, which is great because there are some amazing artists on the list. The work that has been created is great. Broadly, what I'm saying, like, we know that there's just not enough opportunity in that program. It doesn't service the amount of people that it should. And ultimately, it comes down to a top-down leadership and how they want that program to look. Anytime that you're building into contracts over a several-year period, things like you can't have, a fiscal agent,
Right.
negotiating for you.
Yeah.
If you've ever been arrested for graffiti, you can't take part in this program.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? And then went along with like asking the young kids to sign a pledge saying that they're not going to write illegal graffiti on anything if they can be a part of the program. But then your program only offers them something to do for like a month out of the year.
Right.
So how do you expect these kids to curtail their interest
Right.
for the chance that they might maybe be able to paint something with you
Possibly at some point
Right.
down the line.
and get extremely underpaid for it?
Right.
Right.
Nobody wants that.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Then
going back to the malls.
there's a whole issue of student artists being able to get credit for the work that they did. You know what I'm saying? Anything really, like a certificate, a final photo for their portfolio, their name on a plaque,
Right.
right? Which I was told for years would never happen because they didn't want to spend the money. And then when I told them how we could do it, cost effectively, they were with it. But when I told them that I wanted to put all the student names on it, they were against it because the years and the walls that I didn't work on, they didn't really know who the kids were, and they didn't want parents coming back and being upset with them because their kid wasn't named on it.
Oh,
And I was like, yeah. So a lot of it came down to management
Right.
and what they were doing, and then what they weren't willing to do because they didn't want to get caught, not really fulfilling the obligations to the
Yeah.
community the way they were supposed to.
Yeah.
I put all that aside because after Jim Graham created this program, and it's had the history that it's had, murals have exploded across DC. Most of them are not funded by the city. Most of them are funded, privately or with some sort of partnership with the business.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of them.
I had just sort of assumed that they were publicly funded.
You have certain bids that are underwriting the creation of murals, and the current state of it is that there's a fine line between what is a community mural, what is a paid advertisement, what is an attempt at art washing a neighborhood. You know what I'm saying?
Art wash.
What is art washing?
Yeah.
Well,
I've not heard that term before.
so art washing is when art is intentionally brought into a community without intentionality, right? So art for art's sake.
Okay.
All right. I saw one of the questions on here is it Noma or is it Gallaudet? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's Trinidad. You know what I'm saying? But Noma, right, and Noma Bid have had a program for the last few years called Powwow DC, where they bring in artists from out of town and they give some commissions to artists here. As of right now, from what I understand, the artists aren't paid. I'm not sure. what that is. But the artwork that's being installed into Noma is non-contextual to the history of the neighborhood. It does not reinforce the traditional identity of the community. And in essence, changes the face by taking up prominent spaces in the community and assigning them with visual value that doesn't align with necessarily
Right.
the space.
That I live in Trinidad, but they call it Noma now.
And in the broader context of it, it speaks to the popularization of murals because now you have marketing directors who use murals as part of their toolkit, the marketing toolkit. Right across the street from Howard Theater is that Washington, D.C. Stella Artois ad,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
A mural
Right.
or an ad.
Or an ad.
Right.
Good question. I never even thought about that.
And, I look at it, so I kind of look at it from, I got like the Fugazi meter when it comes to
What is the
who I'm going to paint.
Yeah.
murals for,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so Fugazi, you know Fugazi?
The bank.
Yeah.
So,
I know who they are.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just know what the Fugazi meter is. I don't know what
so
that means.
the Fugazi meter is something like this. Is like, so Ian MacKay said that they're not going to do interviews with magazines if they got alcohol ads and cigarette ads, and because their fans are young kids, so I don't want them to be subjected to that sort of thing. All right, I'm on the same time. If you are an alcohol company, I drink stuff.
Right.
I'm not paying you.
Right.
I'm saying. Heineken's done this. You know what I'm saying? Other corporate interests. You know what I'm saying? Have tried to sneak their advertisements into our communities through the guise of public art.
Yeah.
And that is something that the artists have to have. I think the wherewithal to deny. It's hard because there are hundreds of people in the city that do this kind of work, and anybody might take that commission because they need to. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, are we doing our community a disservice by allowing, entities such as, Stella Artois to take up such a prominent space in our community?
Right.
Thankfully, it's not a big beer bottle, right?
Right.
So you can kind of pass it off. That's how they get it passed off.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? At the same time, we have just one block down the shed, right? The mural that was there, right? Which is a bunch of bugs, painted by an artist who's a graffiti writer, from another state, who got brought in by Art Wino, right? The church, right? To do murals. They brought in a bunch of artists from all around the world and paid them to do murals around the city, imported talent, right? And then what did they paint? They painted something that doesn't mean anything on the gateway to Black Broadway. You know what I'm saying? So that's art washing to me.
Okay.
It's weird because it almost feels like, when you speak of it, now that I understand what you mean by that, it kind of feels that way with clubs, with music venues,
Sure.
You know what I mean? Whereas you may have clubs that are, their booking is not happening at the level, their booking agent or their booking company isn't in DC, but they're booking shows for these clubs in DC. And but you got all these other local, acts, which are killing. But
and you also have the problematic DC culture where people don't want to pay for art. And by people, I mean the club owners, even city entities. You know what I'm saying? Art entities. They don't want to pay you, necessarily. And we've had this problem here in the city with graffiti writers being asked to come in and paint in spaces. G40 and Artomatic and some of these other things, where they're a big annual thing. They got a big budget. When it comes down to they have all this space and they want the graffiti artists to come in, they don't seem to ever have any
money. Into another one of the questions we wanted to ask you about the whole DC culture and how it treats street art, compared to places like Philadelphia, New York, even Baltimore, where that is really treated as an amenity. It's part of their kind of marketing. DC does not seem to do that. I mean, there are a few murals which are iconic and that they celebrate, but not the overall culture. Do you think that is something DC should strive for, or do you think it's something we'll ever get to?
Well, I mean, it's growing. I know for myself, because I lead the DC Murals monthly walking tour in the spring, summer, and fall, that there are more people that are looking at DC as an art destination, particularly in the last 4 or 5 years, where the quantity of murals has almost doubled. And with that in mind, what I'm saying, there's always that potentiality. I'm not 100% sure with in terms of whether or not we'll get to the level of Philly, because Philly has definitely invested a lot of money in the promotion of their murals. We have a hard time here getting the city funding agencies to even release funds to maintain works of art that have already been created, let alone market them. And so I have to say that I have little faith that the arts agencies would get enough wherewithal to do it. I just don't know enough about the differences. I know that here in DC, that every couple of years I have to reintroduce myself to the people who
Right.
have been in the same position, like public arts coordinators and
Mhm.
things
Yeah,
like that,
yeah,
because the changeover is so,
right.
and then it's like every time every time you're calling, you're talking to somebody who's new, who's occupying that office, and you have to qualify yourself
All over
all
again.
over again.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And that's part and parcel to the grants process and the whole thing. And um, a couple of years ago, when they gave me the Mayor's Art Awards, Art Award, I said, what I'm saying, as a critique, and then also as something to maybe strive for, is that the Arts Commission needs to focus more on the process and not on the final product. And I think that that's a lot of what happens here. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're willing to, if you're popping, what I'm saying,
Yeah.
they're willing to throw some money
Yeah.
behind you. If you're growing, what I'm saying, there's not anything
Not so
there
much,
to nurture
right.
you.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying?
Right,
And so
right.
a lot of this stuff is kind of cutthroat, what I'm saying, to
Yeah.
a certain extent, what I'm saying, and the artists are out here, trying to survive. So someone's going to take that
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Stella Artois commission, what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Someone's
Yeah.
going to take, a commission from someone who just put up a new condo, what I'm saying, and now they want to, maybe they covered up a old mural, but then they want you to paint something, with like stripes and polka dots and stuff like that, which doesn't mean anything to anybody.
Right.
And there's a fair amount of work around the city that's like that.
Yeah.
I'm saying,
Mhm.
and someone got paid for it, and it's not something that you can dwell on. I'm saying, I just try to, whenever somebody calls me about something, what I'm saying, I turn on the Fugazi meter.
Mhm.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
Is it good for the community?
Yeah.
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 You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Is this going to be detrimental to the
Yeah.
community? You know what I'm saying? And I pick and choose, like who I work with in that way.
Mhm.
It's like the Tao. It's like the Tao Te Ching. It's like
Yeah.
following the path.
Yeah.
Is it on the path or is it a crazy detour?
Mhm. Yeah, you mentioned a lot of the new developments that are coming in, and a lot of them do have murals or some kind of paint party or some big thing attached to it. What impact do you see kind of just development and then gentrification having on street art?
Well, I mean, it's a double-edged sword
Mhm.
because, okay, so I had a conversation earlier this week with the director of Woolly Mammoth Theater, former director of Woolly Mammoth Theater, and one of their program officers, who was instrumental in creating a series of murals on 14th Street and on U Street in 1993.
Mhm.
Now, at that point in time, nobody would say that U Street was in danger of being gentrified, right? But within 3 or 4 years, you would totally see that the development happening, right?
Mhm.
So now, were those murals the reason why people decided to buy in the neighborhood or whatever, or that the neighborhood was gentrified?
Mhm.
No. And I don't think that any of the graffiti murals, the production walls that we painted, necessarily like lent towards gentrification. Did it turn the area cooler? Like, used to, was always cool. Right? When you start to have all these graffiti walls going up, it's like extra
cool.
Right.
right? So, yes, it can have that sort of effect on the neighborhood, and has in the past. And that kind of that time in history, that microcosm, can be looked at here in DC, can be looked at in certain places in New York, everywhere around the country, right? Even look at you guys have heard of Art Basel, Wynwood.
Yep.
I'm saying, started the exact same way.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, a few of the homies in Miami started painting big walls down there. All of a sudden, people were excited about it. All of a sudden, somebody's opening up a restaurant. You know what I'm saying? Like, it happens. And I think as folks in the city, and I can't speak because I come from PG. You know what I'm saying? Like, and where the city that I'm from, Hyattsville, is being gentrified right now. In a weird kind of thing. I haven't been there for many years, but Hyattsville is being gentrified.
Yeah, I'm at Pyramid Atlantic once a week.
Yeah.
And it's amazing watching this.
Right. And
Yeah.
so when I was growing up, that whole area
Yeah.
was just like a husk. You know what I'm saying? Sugar Ray had a gym there, but everything else was just kind of like closed down. Like,
Right.
Where busboys is my dad used to work at the car lot.
Right,
You know?
right.
So we see how development moves, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, nowadays, because there is a known on the plus positive effects of having graffiti, street art, murals in your general location, that's being included in marketing outreach, you know what I'm saying? In final comps to show you this fun, energetic, artsy space where you could be living. And
Your young demographic.
I have seen things like this. So a few years ago, there was an event on Rhode Island Avenue. It was hosted by a nonprofit organization that shall remain nameless. And it was this strip mall, right? That had liquor store, dollar store, whatever. It was closed down. It was right next to the apartment complexes, and whoever owned it decided, hey, let's do a paint jam, you know, and invite the artists, invite this nonprofit to bring these artists here.
Right.
Like, you guys could paint the whole building.
Right.
So said nonprofit went and organized this whole thing and had artists come out and paint. The same time that these artists were there painting, this same building owner was evicting people out of that apartment complex, right? And One DC, there's a really great organization here in DC. They were fighting with the tenants to try to make sure that the developer kept its word on the number of bedrooms that were going to be in the newly built apartments that they were supposed to be able to return to. And they weren't moving until they got that provision locked in. So, same developer hosting this event right here, evicting people right over here, and in their marketing, they're talking about this great new arts district that's popping up.
Yeah.
And I made a comment about it on social media. I try to be as diplomatic as possible when talking about the artists because they're all my friends, you know, and I love all of them. You know what I'm saying? So I don't like to see us getting taken advantage of in that way, particularly when all we really want to do is hang out together and paint. And so that question of why are we being allowed to paint here right now is a question that goes along with that Fugazi meter, you know what I'm saying? Like, because any other day of the week, if I just rolled up and tried to paint here, it would be a problem. But today you said I can, I want to know why.
Wow. Wow.
What role do you think the public plays or maybe should play in supporting our local street artists? I mean, besides taking a picture and slapping it on Instagram.
Which is problematic because most of the time people don't tag the artists. And it's just like, look at this beautiful mural I found. Or you just found it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I could see the artist's name right behind you in your picture, but you ain't tagged or her, you know? So that's a big problem, right? I think part of it is like, you know, being an educated consumer. It's like with anything, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're going to listen to music, you're going to consume music. How, you know, what does that look like? You know, I think all of those things kind of come into play. Obviously, the more people know about the artist, the more they're going to, you know, like you do, like tag the artist, you know, share, whatever have you. Ultimately, you know, there's not a whole lot you can do because you're not going to educate 800,000 people at the same time to get them all doing this thing, you know what I'm saying, that's going to support the artist more. You know, but in a very broad sense, you know, what they can do is if they find artists that they like, you know, that are in the neighborhood, you know, that are in the city or in the surrounding area, I think it's important to support them. And then also, you know what I'm saying, if you are living in a neighborhood and they're thinking about bringing a mural into your neighborhood, you know what I'm saying, for you to have it, sometimes you have, you know, that forward information that you can be a part of the process. I would say try to be a part of the process because then you can try to stipulate, hey, we don't want to bring in an artist from out of state to paint something that an artist from the city can. You know,
Right.
I got really upset with DGS a couple years ago, where they brought a new artist in from New York to paint that Abraham Lincoln mural that's on the Metro Branch trip. One, you know what I'm saying? Cool, I guess.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Two, like, why did you pay $100,000 to somebody from outside of the city?
Did they really pay $100,000?
Oh yeah, they did. And you know, that project, that wall could have fed 15 to 20 artists
Yeah.
in the city.
Same reason why a big club can be packed with tickets that go for $30 and book a local opener and only have $100 to pay them and say, well, you can get some exposure.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, but even beyond that, because that is them, you know, I know because I knew who got into the finals, you know what I'm saying, of that selection, you know what I'm saying, that even at that point, you know what I'm saying, what you brought up earlier about favorites and about like known names, you know what I'm saying, came into play even for the people who were selected from DC, which is like, okay, you know, I look at those selection processes with raised eyebrows. Obviously, the panel model where you have a bunch of people looking at your work, you know what I'm saying, without much context, you know what I'm saying, and don't really understand what they're looking at because they're not of the discipline or whatever have you. You know, I just think that there are way too many artists in the city for you to be spending money elsewhere. Like when they went down to South by Southwest and the DC showcase, but they got Wu-Tang and Erykah Badu to headline. You know what I'm saying?
That's
No, but it's the same thing.
That's the reason why we created the hut.
Right.
I was there.
Right.
When they pulled the thing. Yeah.
And it's the same thing. It's like because we're only valued at this local level, you know what I'm saying? Like it makes it impossible for us to break that particular habit of the city of feeling like, oh, we got something big, we need to go with someone, you know, out of town.
And the thing that's so crazy in terms of talent, I was thinking about that this morning. Like some of the dopest people that I'm like currently just like into are all from within a 15-mile radius of where I am. You know?
I mean, and it's crazy because, I mean, and this is happening in music, as you were talking about. So many artists, you know, that I listen to, that, you know, I've gone to their shows, you know, they've been hustling, and they're like, okay, we're going to New York. Like, we're, you know, we can't break through. We're not getting a shot. Like you're saying, you know, they're booking some big name and saying, oh, you know, you can play for like $100.
Right. And visual art. I mean, you know, same thing. And it's, and I don't feel like it's a thing of like, you know, crying sour grapes or anything. I mean, I feel like it's really like it's really like, I also feel like at the level of like some of the arts organization, funding organizations that that I think that they're behind. I always feel like they're like a step or two behind what's really happening.
Also hiring from outside.
I mean, it's the same thing that's been happening.
You're talking about they're hiring the pickers from other places.
Management is not from around here.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. Okai told me this one time when it was another South by Southwest thing or DJ thing, and they picked, you know, a Philadelphia guy, like a famous Philadelphia person, which I love Philly, and I was like, how? And he was like, well, because the person that they hired to do the pickings from Philly.
Right.
Yeah, like one of the bigger festivals, the summer music festivals that's here, they're not from here. They're from New York.
Because
they don't pick local acts. I'm like,
because they don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know.
And they don't take phone calls.
Why have they been going to the same artist pool for the last X amount of years? Because they don't know the other people. You know what I'm saying? Had I stayed in some sort of capacity and done the project management and the picking like I did in 2011, we would have had a whole separate set of artists come in 2012 and 2013. You'd be seeing different styles.
Sure.
Again, not mad at any of my artist sisters and brothers who are getting commissions and whatever have you. It's just about, you know, knowing, and they know, You know what I'm saying? That none of the youngins that they work with
Right.
have gotten the opportunity to do what they've been.
Pipeline. Keep
Right.
the pipeline flowing.
We got to lift each other up. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And you gotta, and sometimes you have to say, you know what, look right there,
Sure.
you know,
Sure.
because that's a real thing. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? People are gonna keep going to you because, you know, that's you. Again, can't fault anybody because we all trying to keep the lights on, and if you want to keep living and creating in DC, you got to keep those commissions coming. It just shouldn't be, it just shouldn't be an either or.
Because I know, mentoring up and coming street artists is important to you. I know you've mentioned that as we've talked.
Up and coming
Graffiti artists. I'm sorry. How are you having these same conversations with them that like, hey, I can help you, improve how you're painting, your style, things like that. But when there's this, bureaucracy that we've been talking about, is that part of what you're telling them? Like, hey, you can be the best artist, but you might not get recognition. You know what I mean?
So, I mean, most of my young artists, the ones that I've worked with over the last 10 years, are fully aware to a certain degree of the situation because they are the artists that did not get the credit. You know what I'm saying? Like, people know me for putting together, I did this project, that project, that project. I didn't do that by myself. You know what I'm saying? Like, everything I do, there is a group of artists that are around me that are working with me to make that happen. And, to the extent and what power that I have to put their names on that, that's what we do. When we did the Paul Robeson mural,
That was
if you go and see the plaque, it says me and Andrew Katz.
okay.
Right? That's because Art Commission wouldn't let me put the other 5 artists who worked on the mural on the plaque because the application had my name and his name.
This have you seen? You've seen it?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That's I think like one of the first ones that I ever saw.
Yeah. And so, Maria's right here. Maria's on that wall. She did the portrait of Robeson as Othello.
Yeah.
But when it came down to it, and I submit the plaque design, and there's 7 names on it, right? Well, this is the project that was submitted due to. I was like, all right, but we have these other artists that work with us. Let me do. Oh no, you can't do that. Okay. Well, I'm going to make another plaque, can't do that either. Okay. It's the same. It goes back to the same thing with the student artists not getting their names on plaques.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, this is a weird thing,
Right.
about the bureaucracy and whatever their policy is,
Right.
for how things are recognized and noted. At the end of the day, though, again, it strikes a general tone deafness. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? I just don't know. I mean, I don't know any mural that just gets painted.
Right.
I mean, it's probably somebody, but in general, it's always a group of people. You know what I'm saying? So, for me and how I try to work it is that I get approached with opportunities to do things all the time. I have a large network of artists that I work with that I've worked with over the years. Some are older than me, some are younger than me. And depending on the project, you know what I'm saying, I put a team together. I try to break bread with as many artists as I can in that regard.
For sure.
I might have a commission. We just did a mural that had a $3,000 budget. And it was very specialized. It was it was an organization, Veterans for Peace. They wanted a mural for deported veterans to bring awareness to the plight of deported veterans. There was an organization. Part of their organization was going to be in DC to do some lobbying, and they wanted to have a place where they can come and do a press conference. So they had $3,000, right? And I reached out to one of my younger artists. Her name is Flora Rivas. She has never had a mural commission. She's helped out on a couple dozen murals in the city, but she's never had her own. And I said to her, I was like, listen, we have this budget. All right, I'm going to give you half the budget. All right, and you come up with, your artwork. We'll present it to them. and then we'll install it. And she was with.
Mhm.
And so that was the plan. She and I were going to do that. And then I brought in another artist, Eddie Harris, who we've been working with pretty recently, and said, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to be installing this with Floor. We want to get this done, quickly. I want to bring you in and help. Boom, boom, boom." There's 3 artists right there eating off of
Right.
$3,000 check. I'm not taking the majority. He's not taking the majority. We give the young sister a lift up, give her first commission,
For sure.
get her paid. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? And again, we break bread.
Right.
And that's like that with pretty much everything that I do. If I'm painting on a mural, 9 times out of 10, there is a group of artists that are working with me, and we're splitting up that pot.
Sure.
And I think more of that needs to happen. Because that ensures that our community can keep growing. And so I'm seeing a lot of the young people, doing that sort of thing. And there's a lot of that within the community. I mean, you can't employ everybody on the project. You just have to, try to work your way around.
Yeah, is that how the 14th Street Graffiti Museum came about?
Well, that's because I mentioned Eddie Harris. Last spring, last summer, Eddie Harris came into Uptown 94, which is my little kiosk retail space inside of Home Rule Records, and he asked if I would meet with him over on 14th Street. That he had some space, and he was looking to try to bring some energy to the block. The Metro Bus Barn right across the street from the space had just recently been closed for renovations, and there's a whole strip of businesses there that are really hurting in the midst of COVID, and also with the bus barn. So I went over, we looked at a bunch of spaces, and I noticed that there was this courtyard that abuts the back of this strip that was pretty empty. I mean, there was a bunch of garbage cans and crap in there, but nobody was using it essentially. And I said, I was like, I'm kind of interested in this space. And we started having a conversation. He's like, well, what would you want to do? And it was the beginning of August, and Cool Disco Dan Day was coming up. And I was like, I really want to do something for Dan. And he said, well, let's see what we can do. I came up with the idea of a museum because in general, we paint outside a lot, on walls, whatever. This was like an enclosed space. It had like a bit of a more of a kind of firm, solid feel. And so, I said, well, let's create a museum and let's try to put as many old school graffiti writers in there as possible.
Wow.
Anybody who's been writing for 30 plus years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so that I wrote a proposal for it. Uptown Main Street, who does great work up 14th and O Kennedy, were receptive to it. We asked them. They said they wanted to fund some art projects, and they wanted to put a bunch of different murals all over the place. And I was like, well, I have this idea, and this can really like bring foot traffic, bring some energy to the block, and they were receptive to it. It was like a little bit of a touch and go process. We had to get approval from the property owner. We had to get sign offs from all the businesses, and then at the end, we were all right. So we got permission, but how are we going to pay for it? When we were talking about all the walls that we painted in the late 1990s, it's very important for folks to understand that there was no budgets attached to those walls. That was all the homies pulling their resources, spending their own time doing the thing. In 2020, I'm saying, like, we are still, looking for ways to legitimize, the things that we're doing. And so we always have to be, mindful about like just showing up and like doing something.
Right.
But Uptown Main Street said that they had a $6,000 budget to bring new art into the corridor. And I said, well, if you will spend all of that with me, then I can promise you we're going to create something special.
Sure.
And so they got the proposal, their board got together, they voted on it. There was, some people had some concerns, whatever have you, but it all got worked out. And eventually, maybe like a week before Disco Dan Day, which is, we started August 15th, which is the anniversary date for the Double Down Kings.
Okay.
So we celebrate our birthday every August 15th. And Disco Dan Day is on the 22nd. So we started, and by the time Disco Dan Day rolled around, we had the portrait up, and we had some of the OG writers had already come in.
August 22nd is his birthday.
That's Cool Disco Dan Day.
Cool Disco Dan Day.
No, Disco Dan's birthday is December 31st.
Wow.
Yeah, he's a New Year baby. But so we had that. We got, so some of the writers in there hadn't painted in 30-some years.
Wow.
Ari Randy came, and that was the first time that he had touched a can in almost 30 years.
Wow.
Mesk, who's a very well-known style writer and DC graffiti legend, touched the can after 25 years. First time painting in about 25 years. Did a massive, like, 2-story piece inside there. We had Da One come down from New York at DJ SMK, who is a staple here in DC and has been ever since 1984. One of those original, b-boys of the city. Kier, who I mentioned earlier, my origin story is one of my early influences, as well as Mouse from EBO Crew, who you may know.
Yeah, Mouse, I know Mouse, yeah.
Who did the Run Mo. And then we have a whole collection of artists up on the upper terrace level who are all style writers from DC, members of the Double Down Kings, who have been practicing their craft for 10 plus years.
Yeah.
So everybody inside the courtyard, 30 plus years, everybody up top is 10 plus years.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And then our marquee wall, which was pre-existent, a gifted mural from the Trust Your Struggle collective from 2015 that we have augmented, that have the marquee sign on there. And that those guys are really, really cool. They came to paint a mural in the neighborhood, which is now gone because of building repairs. And that one was still there. And so what a great way to like kind of work that into it. With one of the artists being Vile One from CBS Crew, so OG California crew. We want to make sure that we represented and kept that. And then in the very early months, we did a Get Out the Vote campaign. We had Lady Pink and Smith came down. Some OG New York legends that actually blessed in inside the museum as well.
Yeah, it's a really amazing space. I mean, I've not been in the courtyard. I mean, I didn't have to shimmy through the gate so I could see the upper terrace. On the day that I went, it was closed. So yeah, I kind of looked around and took some photos. But the information that you're sharing, because I kind of found out about it through word of mouth, and like I know Washington Post had done a story about it, but they didn't go into any depth at all about like, well, here's what this really means.
Right.
There was like really no context. So I love that. I love hearing this part of it. Like it makes it, I just give it more context rather than just, oh, here's this museum that's here. Like here's what it represents.
Yeah. And the interior courtyard is set up with QR codes for viewers to be able to scan, and they can pull up These Are the World's bio, Ask bio, and you can hear. And as we go forward and we start to create additional content with, we did a panel discussion live from the Graffiti Museum with Mask, Ari, Randy, and Da, and then
When was this?
That was November of last year. It's called Bricklayers. I'll be posting it on YouTube at some point in time. But then I'm conducting a series of interviews now with a bunch of the OGs. To get their oral histories in some form, and then also be able to, utilize their own words to, to kind of narrate the story.
That's huge. Well, we're going to segue. What we're going to do is we're going to look at another video called Remember, and then we're going to switch things up a little bit on the back.
We need crowd participation. It's 2 simple words I need you to say, okay? We should practice it. Hey, yo, kid. What's up? Remember when I used to be dope? Yeah.
Hey, yo, kid. What's up? Remember when I used to be dope? Yeah. Hey yo kid, what's up? Remember when I used to be dope? Yeah. Hey yo kid, what's up? Remember when I used to be dope? Yeah. Hey yo kid, what's up? Remember when I used to be dope? Yeah.
Hip-hop went through phases in its beginning early ages. From Africa, Bambaataa to KRS, blowing stages. Relating, never faking, rhyming about their situations. Could be heard in the basements of New York City subway stations. Alternative to crime, street poets' mind shine. 2 feet on the concrete when rhyming was getting high. People were barely getting by, but their eyes were amazed when B-boys would entertain on a cardboard stage. Different cultures in the past attacking decades to rock. Seemed to hip-hop had come in just a blink of an eye. People said it was a fad, they said it would never last. They were jealous of its power and it was whooping their ass. The people finally had a voice and it was hard and pure. The first sound to come around that had raw velour. It spread like the wings of an albatross. I hope it gets across. I think it's time we have a hip-hop renaissance.
Hey yo kid, what's up? Remember when I used to be dope? Yeah. Hey yo kid, what's up? Remember when I used to be dope? Yeah. Hey yo kid, what's up? Remember when I used to be dope? Yeah. Hey yo kid, what's up? Remember when I used to be dope? Yeah.
Do you remember when it started out in the Bronx? When it was block parties and the break was the heart. When it didn't go platinum or get late show spots. So when it turned itself conscious and received no profit. That was before when pop and got mixed in with rock. The only thing to say now is writers running from the cops. Just as they were when every car in the yard was rocked. And b-boys got locked for dancing in public spots. No more battles on street corners to see who would adore the crown. Or crews formed around, dues to pay before you're down. But the LAB's here and the elements live. Like ODB, we do it for the kids. We do it for the gifts and for the passion they bring. Not for the ends, fake friends, and the platinum rings. If you rap or you sing, DJ or bomb graph, don't give up on hip-hop, the lab is bringing it back.
Hey yo kid, what's up? Remember when I used to be dope? Yeah. Hey yo kid, what's up? Remember when I used to be dope? Yeah. Hey yo kid, what's up? Remember when I used to be dope? Yeah. Hey yo kid, what's up? Remember when I used to be dope?
Yo, hey yo, I've been flossing since Sugar Hill. Before the deals, movie reels, volume meals, price sponsor, hard grills, we used to chill. Cardboard box, analog, no digital. Beef didn't need ballistic, straight fist was physical. It wasn't difficult. I rocked the sister Kangos, the khakis. No publicist, the street clear was your fact sheet. Straight steeds from the roots, the African bees. To y'all abstract dudes used to talk about degrees. With the shiny suits, expensive video shoots, collaboration groups turned truth to third roots. I was living proof. You could say I wasn't voted off. A lot of soul from C's couldn't survive the metamorphosis. I stayed on course with this. Didn't run with the masses, even though I had my share of Carhartt, EK glasses, champion of starter coats, ballys and gold ropes, polka dot shirts, backpacks, Nikes and bag racks. MCM come again, the fact that I'm in the booth now. Hip hop alive and well throughout the underground.
Remember to let us into your skin. And we'll begin to master rhyming.
Hey yo kid, what's up? Remember when I used to be dope? Yeah. Hey yo kid, what's up? Remember when I used to be dope? Yeah. Hey yo kid, what's up? Remember when I used to be dope? Yeah. Hey yo kid, what's up? Remember when I used to be dope?
DC Murals, Spectacle and Story presents Aerosol, Murals for Our Time. A retrospective exhibition exploring the deep connection between illegal graffiti of the past and sanctioned murals of today. From underground roots, evolving on the fringes of 1990s DC, spilling off of the train tracks, out of the shadows, and into the hearts of the city. With groundbreaking documentation, panel discussions, and an interactive exhibit, it's the story of the artist and the murals that changed the face of public art in DC. Coming to Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library, June 10th through July 22nd. For more information or to help us meet our fundraising requirements for this project, please visit dcmurals.org. Aerosol, Murals for Our Time.
thinking that you could set Lee up, cause you got beat up on the line that we took. Award crowns accordingly, disorderly like Buffy, but you punk motherfuckers can't buff me. Youngins trust me, cause OGs never change. Roll the lab every day, like what we gon' do tonight, brain. Same game plan, take hip-hop by storm. With beats as sweet as these, man, we can't go wrong. The first shot was PBS, the 2-day crush shot. Deuce came in the form of on the home front. Ladies always ask Lee why I speak it so rough, cause there's too many kids and rapping, not enough grown-ups. Thinking they contribute just cause they show up, but don't support the culture or make it grow. None that makes me go nuts, and if it's ever my call, I'll crush them all under a medicine ball. Yes, yes, yo. We paint the walls in many shades of use, toys claim abuse when they merely paying their dues. I'll say it's true, yeah, then the beef, cause he's but if not, then you meet your defeat out on the street. We paint the walls in many shades of use, toys claim abuse when they merely paying their dues. I'll say it's true, yeah, then the beef, cause he's but if not, then you meet your defeat out on the street.
I feel like you just decoded the Rosetta Stone of like, you know, graffiti and just like, I mean, it's such a rich history, and for you to be able to, it really is a blessing for me, really sitting here to hear you really just kind of really just walk us through this history, because I think a lot of people, particularly in a town as transient as DC, don't really get, you know, the whole time we've been talking so far, one of the things that really stuck out in my mind is this one wall that used to be on 9th and F by the old, before they rebuilt the MLK library or something. I remember a big tag that said Lee on there.
Yeah.
And the whole time we've been talking like that, like, you know, when I think about the past.
That wall was painted in 1982 by Lee Quinones and Fat Five Freddy.
What?
And it was painted as they were going around touring and promoting the movie Wild Stuff.
Wow.
And so actually that'll be the very first wall that you see in the Aerosol exhibit.
That's amazing. I didn't know he had a DC connection like that.
Well, they have connection to many cities where they were dropping in to do those screenings, and that was part of their promo back then.
I got a picture of Gabriel holding a Fat Five Freddy holding Gabriel when he was 5 years old. Yeah, a good friend of mine, a good artist friend of mine, Billy Colbert, had an exhibit of Fat Five Freddy's work a few years ago. Well, 5 years ago, around in Ivy City. There was some.
Oh, is this when he was doing the thing at the Smithsonian?
Maybe
he was here doing an art exhibit.
Maybe, but he was showing. It was like a small gallery that Billy Colbert had. Yeah. And I brought Gabriel, and Gabriel had this little small like tablet called a Nabi Junior, and my phone battery died. Yeah. And I was like, we got to get this picture. And I was like, oh man, my phone died. I was like, Gabriel, give me the Nabi Junior. Is that joint got some energy on it? And it did. And so I got these Nabi Junior pictures. And then I had to take, because it's such a toy, you know, you can't like download the pictures.
Take a picture.
I had to take a picture of the screen. You know what I mean? But and I saved that picture, and I say to Gabriel, I said, right now you don't really know who it is that's holding you up in this picture. Yeah. You know? Yeah.
The thing about that wall in particular is that kind of planted the seed. And down on F Street, because obviously, you know, 930 Club was there. Excuse me, there's a number of other clubs in and around the area. But in 85 and 86, there were a couple of paint jams down there, 19s down there, at Sly C. Wow. With some of the original graffiti writers that were coming into the city. And so that was kind of like a place to go because you had to see the Lee piece.
Yeah.
And it was there for many years. Yeah. That
little area where it used to be the vendors mall and all that, like that little area right there had art studios up top, and like it was a very interesting area. But we're gonna switch things up a little bit and deal with this music. Talk about some music. I think that I may have known you as a musician first without really having any idea of how you were really getting busy with paint.
Which is funny because I knew him the opposite. I
You
had
knew
no
that?
idea. I knew him for his paint. Had no idea about the music.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So how do you talked a little bit about the pillars of hip hop. Do you do you see that as one influencing the other, or how do you move about through these places, or is it all is it what's like one big braid of activity?
Um, I go through cycles
Mm.
where I'm painting more, and honestly, like when it comes to like actually going out and painting graffiti, I'm maybe like 25% in on
Mhm.
painting graffiti right now
Mhm.
because I took a big step back when my son was coming,
Okay.
and that's when I kind of reined in as much of my legal activities as possible.
For sure.
When I started really focusing on the writer's bench to mentor. But another part of that was to, I got a little bit more time to spend with my music.
Yeah.
And we were doing other things. I opened up Art Under Pressure in that time. And,
Right.
we're doing a bunch of things. So
Mm.
I always found myself kind of ping ponging back and forth between music and visual art. But initially, it was, I was writing poetry in high school.
Mm.
And when that sort of translated to me for rhyming over beats, what I'm saying, I got a kick out of it. I thought it was great. What I'm saying, obviously, going down and experiencing Freestyle Union and getting to see the level and caliber of talent, folks like 3LG and Storm the Unpredictable, and that stuff had a super big impact on me. And so I really, really started focusing on that. And like I said, that night that you guys got off stage, I was really, really adamant that I was going to start a group. And we did, within a year or so. Like I finally had to group the lab together. Making music was a way for me to not get in trouble.
Mhm.
Because I was getting in a lot of fights. I got arrested a few times for doing general graffiti thuggery, fighting in public over graffiti, the trespassing.
Yeah.
I spent a few weekends in jail,
Yeah.
Central Cell Block.
Little hijinks, little
Shenanigans.
little guy.
Yeah. But I had enough bologna sandwiches and
Right.
and fruit punch that tastes like cough syrup
Mm.
to know that was not like something that I wanted to be,
Yeah.
having, a reoccurring thing in my life. And so music gave me a way to kind of vent out some of the things that I was getting street therapy for.
For sure.
And I liked that. I liked the attention that I was getting when I would go and perform.
Okay.
And that was, getting props at Kaffa House. I remember very specifically, like the first night that I rapped at Kaffa House, DJ SMK dropped Big Pun's "I'm Not a Player."
Yeah.
But he dropped the instrumental, and I was like, in my head, like I heard it coming on, and I just went and grabbed the mic, and I was like, "I'm not a king, I'm just up as fuck," and then just started going into this whole tirade about like writing graffiti,
Yeah.
and half the party was graffiti writers.
Yeah.
So they were like, okay. And I remember getting off the stage and this OG Cest, like he was like, yo, that was tight.
Yeah.
And they didn't like my graffiti. So you know what I'm saying? Like the fact that they said something positive about my rapping was like, okay, cool.
Right.
I'm gonna do some more of that.
Right.
And it really started with me writing songs for my crew. Right?
Okay.
Mm.
I would make stuff that was just about graffiti, and as I started to get in more locked in with Speaks, who's my partner in the lab, that's the group, and then we had DJ Kel with us initially before he passed away, and then DJ Also Fresh. This idea, about writing songs was very paramount. So there's stuff that has absolutely nothing to do with graffiti. Songs like Easy Steppin', What I Write, which is about writing lyrics and things like that. That stuff is more like into the songwriting aspect, place where I like to dive and go. But initially, it was literally me getting on the mic and talking about whatever beef was going down, and all that kind of stuff. And again, that was kind of like therapy for me. And I'm a big fan. I told you, I got in with KRS-One. Fat Joe is a big influence for me. The Artifacts, a lot of these rappers who write graffiti, and that goes back to K-Rob and Ram LZ. That graph. You know what I'm saying? Because it's this, it's a little subculture, little side thing,
Right.
where MCs are talking about bombing, and that always kind of like stuck very heavy with me. So it's been a presence in my music ever since.
Man.
One of the tracks that we wanted to talk about is the one we picked as the opener for the show, Double Trouble Funk. And when I listened to it, I immediately grabbed my pen and I started writing down like just all these names that I recognized. You name check like Henry Rollins, Fugazi, EU, Chuck Brown, Odyssey, Black Cat, just all of these names. And I'm wondering, like, where did that come from? Like, what was your inspiration for this song?
The inspiration for Double Trouble Funk comes from this. The hook is 1 for the one that love you, 2 for the double down kings. Will we bring baby double trouble funk to wake you out your arc funk. Hope you receive it well, young and like Arc Monk. DC is good to go, been that way the whole time. Matter of fact, we DMV funk them borderlines. In the hood, we get it cranked to make that bank. They offer in handouts, we tell them no thanks. The idea behind it is just that DC has never needed anybody to tell us that we are special, we are good. We've always had this kind of self-contained ecosystem of artistry that while we don't breach necessarily all the time into the national lexicon, here, you know what I'm saying? This is what's important. And that song is really just a roll call. In the respects of like the go-go, but then even broader than that, KRS once said, when you first come on stage, the first thing you're supposed to do is shout out the ancestors, And so even though that's the second song on the album, it kind of serves that purpose. You know what I'm saying? It's me invoking the names of people who are important and who have made significant contributions to the city's culture. And I could have written 40 verses.
For sure.
I had to stop writing. I'm like, there's just too many for me to keep up with.
I could have written 40 verses because we are that deep here. All of them, everybody that gets mentioned there, they have some sort of connection, significance to me for some reason. Like a band that I rocked with. I'm saying? Maybe a hardcore band. Some of the hardcore bands that are mentioned in there, or early memories of go-go music. I'm saying? And all that stuff just kind of resounds with me. And of course, it started off with this one's for Fat Rodney. Never really let go. Because Fat Rodney is, the guy that made it cool to rap in DC. No disrespect.
No. I get it.
But, you know what I'm saying? Because, when Fat Rodney got up with Essence and started doing the thing that he was doing, then all of a sudden all bets were off. You know what I'm saying?
I never forget when Fat Rodney passed. Walking up, I lived on off South Capitol Street on Galveston Street, and I remember it was a nighttime. I was walking up the street, and I heard somebody. I couldn't see where it was coming from, but I heard somebody like banging on a mailbox and like singing, like invoking Fat Rodney's name.
What you gonna do,
Fat Rodney? They was on this mailbox. What you gonna do, Fat Rodney? And I was just like, man, what kind of movie am I living in right now? You know what I mean? Yeah.
And the biggest thing for that song, well, I wrote the song and I wrote the hook, but and I have a recorded version of myself just me doing it.
Yeah.
I was like, this is cool, but this could be better. How could this be better? And the way that it could be better is if Head Rock was on it. And Head Rock was doing the hook.
Yeah.
Because coming from me, that message means one thing.
Right.
Coming from Head Rock, it means something completely different. You know, and I come from that space where, you know, like again, I'm looking at Infinite Loop, I'm looking at 3LG, I'm looking at that. Y'all are the OGs. You know what I'm saying? The only way that this gets co-signed, you know what I'm saying,
For sure.
is you have an OG, you know, get down with it. So I called Hetty. I didn't even know if Hetty knew that I made music. You know? Well, we probably did a show together with him, but I sent him, you know, the song, and he was open to it, and I was super broke actually, but you know, Eddie is a businessman. He was like, yeah, he's like, I got you. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what it's gonna, you know, it's what it's gonna cost to make it happen. I was like, all right, see if I can work with you. I was like, I'll circle back. I think that's not how it came up. That I was like, listen, I don't have, you know, that, but I have it to get us in the studio.
Right.
Oh, and by the way, we're recording with, you know, Asiatic Productions, Boo Boo, the producer.
Yeah.
Boo Boo the Fool?
Right. Y'all say right.
That's what they said. Boo Boo the Fool? That's my man. I was like, oh, word. I was like, that's my guy. I was like, so he you know, we figured out that that's where it's going down, and you know, Hetty was very gracious. He's like, you know what? He's like, I'm coming, and he ended up doing a second record on the end.
Yeah.
Which was beautiful. You know what I'm saying? But part of that's one of my favorite songs that I've ever written and put together because of the fact that I got to do it with Head Rock. And then during the recording process, to bring him and Boo Boo back together, I did not know their history.
That's amazing.
They have a long history, you know.
Boo Boo is genius.
Yeah.
Boo Boo is a total freaking genius.
And if you look at my projects from the time when I came into the game, records that we're releasing just this year, Vintage and Hughes, produced and recorded by Boo Boo, the producer.
Genius.
That's just where I've been. Since day one. And so Double Trouble Funk is an extremely important song to me. You know, and it was like I said, I could have written a number of verses for it. And as a matter of fact, the sentiment on that record was such that we had to create a second record like that on the album, which is Bama Proof. You know, that song, instead of name checking, we kind of use it's a little bit more tongue in cheek. DC's known to get buck wild, our experience unlimited, the unpredicted storm that is your team's demolition. And all to get your head rocked off 3 levels of genius, all behold the nomadic crease, waiting waters in the deep end. So it plays the same way.
For sure.
And it's literally all about like just paying homage to all of those artists that one like welcomed me. You know what I'm saying? Because Tony told me to come down to Cop House. I came down to Cop House. Nobody told me you can't be here. You know what I'm saying? Everybody was like, hey, what's your name? You know what I'm saying? What do you do? You know what I'm saying? Like, as a matter of fact, because I met Storm the Unpredictable that day, and then like a couple of years later, Storm the Unpredictable was responsible for the lab getting signed to a record deal because he gave our CD to Northside Records. You know what I'm saying? Said book these guys. You know what I'm saying? And that turned into a record deal for us.
Wow.
Yeah. So I have so much love. You know what I'm saying,
Good grief.
for that community, you know what I'm saying, and for our community, that making records like that just seem kind of second nature. You know what I'm saying?
You know, it's you know, you often hear, well, I don't know how much now, but there used to be this whole thing about like DC and crabs in a barrel thing and all of this, you know, but it really is kind of healing actually to hear, you know, the connections and the lookouts, you know what I mean, over time. You know, this person looked out and you looked out for this person, how, you know, like that model, like that like speaking that, I think is really important to the people who are watching and listening, you know, as as a frame of reference, really, to like how you get down and move about in the world as an artist. Like we need each other, you know.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, you're saying how people welcome you into the community. You know, like I'm not an artist of any flavor at all, but every group that I've sort of been interested in has been like, oh, you're like, oh, yeah, you can watch what I'm doing. Yeah, you can ask questions. That's cool. Like, no one has ever been like, oh, well, who are you? Like, well, why are you here? Like, you don't belong here.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, it hasn't always been like that in DC, depending on whatever room you're trying to get into.
For sure.
Graffiti, it wasn't like that for me. Like, I was painting graffiti for a number of years, and I was more likely to get gone over or crossed out until CERT, you know, started putting me on. You know, when CERT started putting me on, and it was okay for me to come around. Then my stuff started to like hang a little bit more. He started teaching me. Then SMK started teaching me.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes, you know, when I started doing the graffiti writer's bench, teaching graffiti classes to the youngins, I asked SMK first, you know, say, is this okay, you know, to do this? Because a lot of the older writers, they weren't trying to meet young kids. They weren't trying to show them shit, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But SMK was a mentor already. He had already put on a bunch of people. And he said, each one teach one. And that's something that's, you know, been, you know, stuck with me for many years. You mentioned being in a space and situation where there's Asheru and there's you know, there's so many like teaching artists here in the city, and that was one of the things that really affected me early on too, is learning that such and such is teaching over here, such and such is teaching over here. I ended up working for Asheru, you know, teaching graffiti classes and doing different things. And just to know that that was the community that I was investing my time, energy, and resources in. That, you know, because there was opportunities for me to go in other directions and put my time, energy, and resources towards more destructive endeavors, you know what I'm saying, that I could easily like slip into. But because there was this space, they were like, oh yeah, sure, come on in. You know what I'm saying? And that's not something that I was necessarily like, you know, always accustomed to. You know what I'm saying? Particularly if we're speaking about like here's me, a white man, coming into, you know, Black culture. You know what I'm saying? That was not a question. That was not a thing that was like, well, I'll say this. My name on U Street until about 2001 was white boy. You know what I'm saying? But like, nobody called me Cory. That's part of my identity being. You know what I'm saying? I'll take that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'll take that because, you know, coming from PG, I was white boy. You know what I'm saying? In some circles, you know what I'm saying? It's totally fine. But the point is that there was an acceptance there. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't like you can't be in here. You know what I'm saying? It was like, matter of fact, no, come on in. You know what I'm saying? Come on in and check out what we're doing and be a part of it. You know, and that has always stuck with me to the point that I don't want to be in a place where it's going to exclude people. You know what I'm saying? For sure. And we made that apparent when we started the writer's bench, that it wasn't going to be like this thing where, you know, if you were a youngin, if you were a toy, you know what I'm saying, you couldn't come and be with us. You know what I'm saying? No, we wanted an open door policy. Right. You know what I'm saying? I want to grow the tent. I don't want to restrict the tent.
Wow.
That's amazing. Well, this was one of, you know, the Double Drop song was one of my favorite songs on the album. Because as someone who, you know, is still a relative newcomer to DC, for me, it was almost like this, it's like an archive. You know, it's like a snapshot of DC through the ages. You know, some names I knew, some I didn't, some I'm like, you know, oh, I need to learn more about this. Like I want to understand this reference. And like when we were talking about how deep the culture and the history here in DC, like that song just really showed, like you were saying, like you could get going on and on and on. And I couldn't keep up, you know, with all of the names. And it just shows just how much is here.
Right.
And how much I wish people really knew.
Right.
You know, like I don't know what kind of DC's identity sort of is anymore. You know, but there's just so much. And I just wish people who were coming into the city appreciated where it's been, the foundation of everything, you know, that started here. You know, and that goes from the music to the graffiti to just everything.
Well, I mean, what you guys are doing here at the Hut is a big part of that equation. You know, yeah, we have, you know, hundreds of thousands of new people in the city over the last, you know, 10 years. We're expecting more. You know, the city's going to grow. The history has to be first codified and dispersed by those who lived it in order for new people to be able to connect with it.
For sure.
The more we do podcasts, the more we do books, the more we do documentary films, and make sure to lift authentic voices, then I feel like we're going to be successful in that endeavor.
Indeed, indeed, indeed.
Amen. I feel like that's a perfect spot for us to segue to our next section. What do you think, T?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay. I'm excited about this. This is a new segment. You're the first one. We're gonna try this.
An experiment.
Yeah, you are our guinea pig. We're gonna see how this goes. So this segment's courtesy of our kind of shadow creative Jess, who's not here. Shout out to Jess. This is called How DC Are You? We're gonna give you a choice between two things. You pick.
Okay.
You pick the thing, or it's gonna be a short phrase and you finish it.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's all DC things.
But before we start, I
Yes.
just want to confess to you guys and the whole world that I am uneasy.
You know what? This is
I've never heard that.
I heard this for the first time yesterday.
Yeah. A matter of fact, I'm a whole easy. Because I grew up in PG County. I'm from the counties, the immediate DMV counties. I'm in Maryland. Makes you uneasy. I'm uneasy.
He's amazing.
But I'm cousin by default for the number of years that I've lived in Washington D.C. So I can take this test.
I feel that you are qualified enough to answer these questions.
Oh man! All right.
That's so funny.
A whole meeting.
A whole meeting.
Not a half.
Not a half.
Wait, what's
All right.
I mean, maybe if you lived half your life in Maryland, half your
A
life.
half meezy. I think not
Maybe
here.
your mom or dad is from.
There we go. Yeah. Or could it be the other way? Like so. Like what if your mother and father were in their 20s and 30s in the height of the berry years, got the berry come up, moved to Iverson Street or Marlow Heights,
Easy.
and then you grew up and your folks is from Good Hope Road, but you grew up in over by Marlow Heights. That make you amazing.
You're amazing.
All right.
It's okay.
I'm saying.
I embrace my inner Measy.
Your inner
You know what I'm
Measy.
saying? There are certain things that I can appreciate that nobody else can, like getting off of school and walking down the hill to PG Plaza and getting a cinema. You know what I'm saying? That's some Measy shit.
And I used to work at Caribou in PG Plaza.
Oh yeah.
I worked there. When did I do that? I did 90. Yeah, I did. That was 90, 97, 98.
So I worked at Miss Tyndall's, the ice cream shop.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and also at the Gap.
See, so I was doing those. So I was doing those Aunt Nelly. Was it Aunt Nelly? What's the pretzels? Aunt something.
Auntie Anne's.
Auntie Anne's.
Yeah, the pretzels.
When I worked at the Gap, I worked in the storeroom with this cat named Dan. He was one of the DJs from the Soul Controller Mix Show. That's how I heard "Ready to Die" the first time when the day it came out. Because we was in the back folding jeans and putting sensors on.
If my money wasn't right, some days I go right to the food court and get some of them little bourbon chicken, little
samples. Yeah. Take a couple laps.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that is too.
Me and Kokai had a crib together on 4th and Florida Avenue.
You did?
Yeah, that's what we were living together. And then he would come to get me. He had this little Toyota bus, little Toyota like buses. He'd be like, it'd be laundry day. He'd come scoop me up from PG Plaza, and we go to the spot on Route 1 and play pool and wash our clothes.
Where Studs in College Park?
Yeah. Man, that's
Whole me
times, yo.
That's Measy activity.
Oh my God. I love my life. All right.
We'll put you to the DC test. Don't worry, we're not grading you. There's no right or wrong answer.
It's cool.
I think like any answer you do is going to be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I feel
based
like,
on, armed with that knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, you'll be enough. I feel you'll be okay. Okay. All right, ready to do this?
I'm ready.
Okay, first question. Mambo sauce or Old Bay?
Mambo sauce.
Half smoke or hot dog?
Half smoke.
930 Club or Rise Zone?
Old 930 Club.
Ooh, I hadn't thought about that.
Can I go there?
You can go there. I'll give you that.
3LG,
Yep.
De La, 30 degrees below, Doug Lazy joint. Oh yeah, no, I saw Big Will Planets there. Yeah, no, I'm
I saw Thought get so smoked out when Scott Storch was still with them and Rozelle. And it was the Roots and Gangsta.
Yeah, I was in the basement. They had the Freestyle Union in that little room downstairs, and they had lined up chairs. There was like 30 MCs, and they were just going back to back to back to back to back to back.
Wow. Does your answer change if it's new 930 Club and Rise Zone?
Well, the thing is, I don't know what that other one is.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
I might not be that old school.
Well, it's still been, and it's been there. It's been there since '97, and I still don't know what it is. I mean, we've done some gigs there, but once you've been to the old one, that smell.
Oh,
You're talking about the 930 Club.
Yeah,
I'm talking about. I don't know. What
Rise Zone.
Yeah, what is
That's Tacoma Park. It's a little house in Tacoma Park, across the street from the CBS and the Busboys and Poets. They do. It's like a house. They do like house.
Oh, that's a new thing.
Is that new?
I mean, it's not even 10 years old.
Okay. All right. Maybe that was never.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway. Okay. This one will be easy. If someone says, "Meet me at the Big Chair," where do you go?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you say Gallaudet or Noma? Trinidad. Okay. This one might not be fair, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Which do you prefer, DC native or Washingtonian?
Native Washingtonian.
Native Washingtonian. Okay. Okay. Do you say National Airport or Ronald Reagan National Airport?
National. Just national.
Yeah.
Okay. Marvin's or Tropicalia?
Tropicalia.
You said it with a there's like a look.
I mean,
You're like
Tropicalia, and that's only based off of like Underdog, Sam the Man Burns, and all that, putting in work there. Marvin's is cool.
It had its own kind of vibe.
It's cool.
Oh yeah, right. Is Marvin still exist?
But see, here's the thing. Here's the thing. You know what I'm saying? That's the you're talking about the Hiltons. You know what I'm saying? And that whole like I don't know how to put this. They got the money from the city to open up bars.
Yeah.
And they wasn't giving money to anybody else to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then for them to, they did the Shea Billies and all that stuff, you know what I'm saying? And, it's cool, you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
But it is not a cultural epicenter by any means.
Gotcha.
It's just a place for people to go get drunk.
Good drunk, yep. Day drinking might have been their time too. Adams Morgan or U Street? I feel like I know the answer.
U Street.
I knew that one. Whoops.
Where are you headed on the first hot day of the year? That's an interesting question.
That was Jeff's question.
Where are you
hot day
headed
of
on
the
the
year?
first day of the year?
In DC or Neasy?
Interesting. That's an interesting question. I'm going to say I am heading to whatever wall we are painting.
That's what's up.
Good answer.
And
Okay.
that could be anywhere in the city.
Awesome. Okay. Who's your favorite local act?
Oh, that's so tough. All right.
Top five? Does that make it easier?
Yeah. Right now, favorites in the city, Uptown XO.
Yeah, he's nice.
For bands, I like a band called Redline Graffiti.
Yeah.
Yes, I love them so
They're
much.
my favorite.
I love them.
I took my son to see them when he was 6.
See, that is good musical education right there.
Yeah,
Those guys are the players.
I took him to see KRS One, and we took him to see Redline Graffiti. So that's not
You raising them.
Yeah. Let me see. There are so many. There are so many really important musicians in the city. I feel like making this list is really bad. But Courtney Doe. Do you know Courtney? Yeah, she's on the album with me. She's also a dear friend of mine going back to when we were 16 years old. And I love her music. If there's any justice in this world, Courtney will break through because her voice is necessary.
We've got 3.
That's 3. I'm gonna go ahead and throw DJ Underdog in there,
Okay.
just because that's all the vibes. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I'm gonna throw DJ Oso Fresh in there, because just from the
OG.
perspectives. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
Okay.
yeah,
And I know that he's not making his own music, but he's a music provider.
yeah, yeah.
And the taste level is exquisite.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah, that was 5, but you can go one more.
see, I got so many, and there's youngins, you know what I'm saying? That I really love what they're doing too. A Coco
Okay.
was a two MC group, two female MCs. They make really great music. They're doing solo stuff now. Surrey U and all of the kids from the Ku Klux Klan. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that group, but
Wow, nah.
they're Avion was Nonchalant's nephew who passed away.
Oh, wow.
And Cal Rips.
Okay.
I love all those guys.
Mm.
You know, big fan of Gold Link.
Yes.
Big fan of Gold Link.
Yes.
Um,
Saw him at Tropicalia.
There's so
Yeah.
many. There's just so many. It's so unfair. But if you're asking, who's my favorite rapper in DC right
Okay,
now,
I'm asking who's your favorite rapper?
it's Uptown X. So
Check them out.
That is a
culture over corporate. Elu, Aline Bilal, AB the Pro, another one.
Mm-hmm.
Nate G.
Love Nate.
Um,
I haven't checked him out in a while.
and you know the thing is, I just mentioned like a bunch of people.
Mhm.
Half those people are members of the Double Down Kings.
Mm.
EXO, AB,
Mhm.
Nate G. You know the Oh So Fresh.
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
You know that's all family.
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Favorite local record shop. Favorite record shop.
Yeah,
Any decade.
So, obviously, we got to go with 12-inch, just
Yeah.
bucks, because set the standards. Currently, Home Rule Records at 7th and Kennedy,
Wow.
which is where Uptown 94 is.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know what I'm saying? That's home base.
Mm-hmm.
And those guys have a great eye for records. There's amazing stuff in there if you'd like to dig.
Okay. Your favorite place for late night eats?
I haven't been there in a while, but Kramer's Books and Afterwards Cafe.
They speak
Yeah,
Johnny.
they are now Kramer's, FYI.
Yeah,
They're not?
They changed. They changed
No,
their name.
it's owned by the same people now. Years ago, it was owned by two different people that were beefing with each other. Now it's owned by the same person. The guy who started In Pizza bought it, probably because he didn't want to get sued for the ampersand.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah, but they've done a lot of great work in there. I mean, the vibe's a little bit different. I used to DJ there like Friday nights and do
Did you?
locals only sets, where I would spend like punk, hardcore, hip hop.
Oh, man.
Yeah, my locals only sets.
Yeah, that's dope.
Awesome. Yeah, I love Kramer's.
Yeah, Fettuccine New Orleans. I don't know if they still have it. That's my go-to.
I'm gonna check that out. See, now I'm hungry. I'm gonna have to check that out. Okay, so that was the end. You did really well. Yeah. You need.
Wow. Well, so you're doing a lot of things, the 14th Street Museum and just all manner of stuff. Your shadow, you cast a big one.
Just trying to keep
You
moving.
know. So how can people find you?
I am Rock Creek Lee across social media platforms.
Rock Creek Lee. Okay.
Yep, at Rock Creek Lee. You can find me on Facebook as Cory Stowers.
Okay.
So that's what my mama knows me as.
You know, I say that when we do gigs. Like, my mom, I'm Terrence. That's my mother.
I got to keep that line of communication
For
open
real.
for the outside world.
For real. Yeah, sure.
I wanted to give you a chance to promote a couple things. I know you've got some stuff coming up.
Sure.
So shout them out. What do you got going on? What's coming up?
First and foremost, I have a vinyl record out that is available at rockcreeklee.com. You can go there and you can get that record, and you can get all types of merch with the Double Down Kings logo on it. In June 10th to be exact, we will be unveiling Aerosol, Murals for Our Time, a new exhibition which will be on the exterior of the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library down in Chinatown. There you're going to see us explore the origins of the modern mural movement by dissecting and going back in time to see the illegal graffiti movement, how it contributed to it. I'm also dropping a new project on the 3rd, June 3rd, which is my birthday.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Happy early birthday. Yeah.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. That is going to be titled Divine Line Disciple, and that should be hitting all streaming sites by the 3rd of June, so you'll be able to check that out. We have a documentary film we're working on for the history of the Double Down Kings, and another album dropping first quarter next year. So,
I know you have some walking tours coming up.
yes, also as part of my associate director duties for DC Murals, Spectacle and Story, I will be leading our bi-monthly walking tours starting in May. So second and fourth Saturday of every month, you can join us at Columbia Heights Metro Station as we walk down through U Street into Shaw, and I tell you all about the murals and about the graffiti, and I walk you into stank alleys.
That's what's up.
And tell you minutia about the history of DC graffiti.
Oh,
That's awesome. I can't wait.
That's fantastic.
Hopefully there will be no cicadas so I can come out and join you for that.
Yeah. Wow.
Of course, you know the most important project I'm working on right now is named Biani Bronx Stowers, which is my son.
Yeah. Oh.
He's soon to turn 13. He's got a bass guitar. I just bought him an amp.
Yeah.
We're going to New York for record shopping for his birthday.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait.
I need to take some notes.
Yeah.
Gabriel will be 11 on the 12th of July.
That has nothing to do with me. As far as his interest, he has been moving in a music direction for a couple of years. It has nothing to do with me being a musician. He knows only like 2 of my songs. He doesn't even care for rap at this point. Like,
Wow.
He's listening to a lot of early 90s Seattle and some early punk stuff.
Yeah.
Has he seen your murals and stuff? Does he know who you are?
A couple of years ago, he told me that I was famous because his DPR instructor saw me in the newspaper. And so every now and then, like, he'll say, "Oh, I saw you on the news," or "I saw this." I told him I'm local famous, you know.
Yeah.
That's only a byproduct of being around for a long time. But he knows to a certain extent because like he's been to the walls. He helped us on the Paul Robeson mural. Like,
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
He's done some things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I ask him all the time, "You want to come to the wall with me?" No.
Right.
Because he's like, "How long are you going to be there?" I'm like, "We're going to be there for like 9 hours." No.
Right.
I'd rather stay home with the pug and with the internet.
Yeah. Sure.
But that's fine. His music trajectory has been really, really interesting because over the last year, he's just kind of started to develop some sort of a taste of his own. And then as he's been inquiring, I've been able to push things over to him. So like he's listening to Fugazi.
Yeah.
He's listened to Bad Brains. I
Yeah.
don't think he gets that part yet. But
Right.
we the deeper we go into the Seattle sound, the more it points back to DC hardcore. And so he's
Yeah.
starting
That's
to
awesome.
realize that,
Yeah.
which is a great thing.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Paige, where can folks find you?
You can find me at curious_caravan on socials. You can find me online at curious-caravan.com. Yeah, that's where you can find me.
Alrighty. And
And what about you?
well, you can find me on at Hut DC Events on Instagram, also at T Nicholson Art on the gram, and at Thalo Blue on the gram.
When's that Thalo album coming out?
We got to get these people in here. Everybody. We all got our shots. We all been to the vet and got our shots. And now maybe we can get together and record. I got the songs. And then also on sub.z lyrics. That's really where the action's been. I've been recording with Team Demolition, with HL, with Black, with this cat I just met named Nomadic that's got some crazy beats. And so the pandemic has got me warming my pen up again. I got about 5 or 6 things already in the can, and we're looking to start putting those things out into the ether again. It feels pretty exciting and pretty good, you know.
Am I seeing a double bill? I'm feeling
It took a minute because I didn't
Double
want to feel like I was nervous. Like, you know, I had, you know, people, you know, kind of, some people know me just from Phalo, and then, you know, and then when I started writing again, it was sort of like I didn't want to feel like, you know, I was in jail for 20 years and just came out like, you know, on some like, rah! And they were like, yeah, no, that's not, they're not doing that no more. you know.
Everybody wants the first day home track.
Well, my first day home track is I've been just letting a couple of really like people with really frank opinions like hear it, and they was like, I was like, am I the guy with the, you know, coming out of jail with the goldfish in his heels, or am I? And they was like, oh no, you good, you all right. So I was like, okay, all right.
You know, the funny thing is that the whole playing field has been leveled in the last year and a half, particularly with the pandemic, with most major celebrities having to sit it out,
Yeah.
to a certain extent. And then when you look at just look at the Grammys from last year, like most of the people who were nominated were like 35 and older. And that idea that you can't be over 30 and rapping is gone.
Yeah.
I think Conway and Benny the Butcher and all those guys just kind of smash that age limit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
So-
Jay-Z too does not against any of those guys, or Royce the 5'9", you know what I'm saying? Like, those guys are all in their upper 30s and they're putting out primo product.
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good, man.
As you should, because
you know.
as Head Rock says, you know what I'm saying, it's time for us to take all of those experiences and accolades and put them into the view of today.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah.
That's why there's been no moves that have been misspent. You know, anything that I've done over the last 20 years, I bring to bear in everything that I do right now. You know, I have something for you.
Uh-oh.
Is it something we can do?
Oh, my. What? Oh, man.
That's for you.
Wow.
Oh, man.
That's amazing.
This
Let
guy.
me see the cover. Wow.
Rock Creek Lee, songs in a Stallo Man's key. So, Cory, we want to
Look at these.
thank you again thank you, bro. Thank you again for really making our In the Pocket series. It's like you know, cornerstones. It's like these bricks that we're putting together. You know what I mean? To build this structure, and so every brick is important in its own right, you know, and you really laid it down for us so thoroughly that I think that as we start to have more guests and the lines start intersecting, it's just, you know, it's just going to get bigger and bigger, and I really just appreciate your time, man. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the time you've put in, and I appreciate the time, your service, really. You know what I mean? And my uncle always tells me that when you're in service, you're at the top of your game. You know what I mean? And it may not always look like it to everybody else, but when you're in service, you're at the top of your game. And I just want to salute you, man.
Same for me.
Yeah.
I mean, the work that you do and all the other artists do so enriches my quality of life. And it's actually the reason why I moved into DC from being out in Alexandria, is to be closer and immerse myself in the arts and culture here. So I'm so thrilled, you know, that you answered the phone, answered my email. I was like, who is this? So
I do
thank
appreciate
you so
guys
much.
bringing me on, particularly for episode 2. You know, the Double Down Kings with the Deuce. So
The Deuce.
it's only right that we're here for episode 2.
Deuce.
And I wish you guys much success.
Thank you.
I'll be
so much.
tuning in for sure.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Cory Stowers. Be on the lookout. In the pocket.
One for the one that love you, two for the double. Down kings, what we bring, baby, double trouble. Double trouble funk to wake you out your art funk. Hope you receive it well, young and like Art Monk. DC is good to go, been that way the whole time. Matter of fact, we DMV, funk them borderlines. In the hood, we get it cranked to make that bank. They offering handouts, we tell them no thanks.
This one for Fat Rod, he never really got his gold. Lost his life late night right outside the show. This one for Vinny D, Stinky Dink and Scorpio. Stone Cold Hustlers, for sure the Dark Capital. This one for DJ Cool, Tony Blunt and Nonchalant. Black Indian, Section 8, DT Top. This one for Len Vaz, never really got his run. One sniff for the girl and his heart was done. This one's for Little Benny, you will always be master. Know you're jamming out with Marvin in the hereafter. This one's for Henry Rollins, Annie and Makai. Uptown, EDT, baby DIY. This one's for Copper House, Icebox and Ibex. Club U, Black Cat, Big G and Timex. This one's for DJ CeeLo, oh so fresh and RBI. Max Kid, Huckabucks and OP Tribe. Let's ride, let's
One for the one that love you, two for the double. Down Kings, what we bring, baby, double trouble. Double trouble funk to wake you out your art funk. Hope you receive it well, young and like Art Monk. DC is good to go, been that way the whole time. Matter of fact, we DMV, funk them borderlines. In the hood, we get it cranked to make that bank. They offering handouts, we tell them no thanks.
This one's for Terry Huff, never got to sing a song. His lonely heart walked the empty streets all night long. This one's for GAC, FFC, and MCA. HOA, NAA, and them 2DKs. This one's for 3LG and the Poem Cs. I owe you free too, so do you if you hip hop in DC. This one's for Asher Rule, Blue, Black, Cold, Kai, Sub-Z, New Geek, Theory, and Dime. This one's for Righteous Spring, Fugazi and Bad Brains. Riot 2020, OI Boys and Sins of Black, yeah. This one's for Jay Skrilla, Tech One, Dirty Hands, Power Moves, Schoolyard, Pollen, and Soul Can. This one's for the Screws, Coke Bust, Melody, Red Line, Rooftop, 6 a.m., no sleep. This for the Godfather, Soul Searcher, Chuck Brown, winding up the crowd. You in double trouble now.
One for the one that love you, two for the double. Down Kings, what we bring, baby, double trouble. Double trouble funk to wake you out your art funk. Hope you receive it well, young and like Art Monk. DC is good to go, been that way the whole time. Matter of fact, we DMV, funk them borderlines. In the hood, we get it cranked to make that bank. They offering handouts, we tell them no thanks.
This one for Big Tony, he always be getting smile. Southside, MAC, baby, can he bow? This one for Pleasure Band, another one for Precise. Sugar Bear, EU, yeah, Lincoln Heights. This one for TCB, BYB, and we are one. TTED, second to none. This one's for Low Budget, Kev Brown, Odyssey. Unknown, homegrown, Diamond District Dynasty. This one for Freddie Teo, DJ Kelton, Don Jones. Young Senators, Will Devon and DJ Dowtone. Yeah, now you hear the funk that I'm on. Put one of them records on, I feel the funk like I'm home. Like my man Boo Boo, or Flex Matthews and DJ Damu, the truth. If you need more proof, this one's for Freestyle You and the Infinite Loop. Times 2.
One for the one that love you, two for the double. Down Kings, what we bring, baby, double trouble. Double trouble funk to wake you out your art funk. Hope you receive it well, young and like Art Monk. DC is good to go, been that way the whole time. Matter of fact, we DMV, funk them borderlines. In the hood, we get it cranked to make that bank. They offering